Order for the regular meeting of the Parks and Recreation Commission for Tuesday, March 26, 2024, and we'll begin with a roll call.
Chair Brown,
Here.
Vice Chair Freeman. Here. Commissioner Cribbs,
Here.
Commissioner Greenfield,
Here.
Commissioner Kleinhaus,
Yes.
Commissioner Oche,
Here, please.
Commissioner Way,
Here.
and Councilmember Vinker.
I am here by Zoom.
Chair, that is 8 present.
Great, thank you so much. We'll begin with public comment. This section is for members of the public wishing to address the commission on items not on the agenda. If there are any members of the public that would like to address the commission at this time, either in person, please fill out a speaker card and submit it to Javad, or if you're on Zoom, please raise your hand.
Chair, I'm seeing no speakers in person or hands raised online.
Great. All right. Thank you. Moving on, we will go to agenda changes, additions, and deletions. Are there any proposed changes to the agenda from commissioners? Great. Seeing none, we'll move on to the approval of the minutes. Are there any comments or questions? Vice Chair Freeman?
I do.
Sorry, Commissioner Cribbs, go ahead.
Line 19, page 9, if we could change the sentence to read, the Bay Area Senior Games swim meet will be held at Rinconada Pool on March 24th. It is open to swimmers 50 years old and over. Thank you.
Okay, any other changes?
Yes, please.
Yes.
I think line 31 needs rewarding.
Same page or?
I think it's the first page. Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay. All right. So with those two amendments, do I hear a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion to approve.
Okay, a second.
I'll second.
Okay, and we'll have a vote.
Chair Brown,
Yes.
Vice Chair Freeman. Yes. Commissioner Cribbs,
Yes.
Commissioner Greenfield,
Yes.
Commissioner Kleinhaus,
Yes.
Commissioner Oche,
Yes.
Commissioner Way.
Yes.
Chair, that's a 7-0 vote.
Okay, thank you. And we'll move on to the department report.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Kristen O'Kane, Community Services Director, and I'm joined by Sarah Robustelli. I know you've met her before. I'm just reintroducing her now that she's back, and she is our Division Manager of Parks and Open Space. So I'm going to start out, and then I'm going to have Sarah provide the project updates. Next slide, please. So just some recruitments. I'm excited to announce that we had interviews for the Assistant Director of Open Space, Parks and Golf last week. Thank you, Commissioner Freeman, for participating in those. It was an all-day event last Thursday, so I appreciate the time that you've spent. I think we have some really good candidates and look forward to being able to announce the selected candidate soon. And then just a reminder, summer camp counselors, we're hiring for our camp counselors as well. So if you know any young people looking for a summer job, send them our way, please. Next slide, please. Wanted to share that our teen center is now open regularly on Friday evenings from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. for high school age teens to come in and just enjoy some activities that are planned, as well as just some socialization and hangout time with their peers. So every Friday night from 6 to 8 at our teen center at Mitchell Park Community Center. Next slide, please. Reminder that the May Fete Parade and Fair is coming up on Saturday, May 4th. Again, this is the 100th anniversary of the parade. It is followed by the fair at Heritage Park where the parade ends. So I hope to see you all there. And I think you'll probably be getting an email asking to be in the parade. We usually like to have our commissioners and council members be in the parade. So look for that email. And then that will also be the same time as our third annual Palo Alto Puzzle Hunt. So this is a fun event for families and individuals that get people out into our city parks and public spaces. You solve these puzzles and find a clue and then go out to the park and collect all the clues. And at the end, you have all the clues to answer the question. So it's really fun. Again, this is the third year we've been doing it in a row, and we've been getting a lot of great feedback from the community. Next slide, please. So I'm going to turn it over to Sarah for project updates.
Hi, so my name is Sarah Robustelli, Division Manager. Good to see you, Commissioners. So in terms of project updates, the items in bold are the changes from your last commission meeting. In terms of the skate park, the analysis was forwarded by our contractor to the planning department for review. They've sent us comments and we are going back to the contractor to respond to those comments. And starting tomorrow, we are kicking off 4 work parties with CSD staff. This is to augment contracted park maintenance at Mitchell Park and Rinconada. This first work party, again, will be held tomorrow, and it will be taken, we'll be doing 3 others in the upcoming 5 weeks, which is prior to our peak rental season. At Mitchell, we'll be renovating all the picnic areas. Those are listed on the slide. And then Rinconada, we will be renovating individual picnic tables 6 through 16. Next slide. So the Sunfish Island Bridge has been completed as part of the Foothills Nature Preserve Improvement Project. You'll see on the left-hand photo that the rangers assisted the contractor with the demolition, and the photo on the right is the bridge that was completed. This was completed last week. Next slide. So the El Camino synthetic turf project replacement project is the design phase as well as bidding has been completed. We will be taking this item to City Council for approval in April and May. And we're still on track for a late spring start for this CIP project. And for the Mitchell Park Dog Park, we've submitted to purchasing with the expected to award in May. And the estimated construction start is fall 2024, which is delayed due to material lead times. Ramos Park Improvement Project, restrooms, as well as the playground construction has begun. Installation with the completion slated for June 2024. This is similar timeframe for the Rinconada restroom. The construction has also begun. Delivery and installation, again, slated for June 2024. And next slide. So the resurfacing multi-use courts for Terman Park and Fletcher School is scheduled for April 1st and 2nd. This is a split cost 50-50 with the Palo Alto School District and the city. And the Coverly Field restroom project, let's see. So I'm only touching on, oh, sorry, I missed one. The Cameron Park project, or the golf, I'm sorry. Golf and netting between the golf course and the airport staff. CSD staff met with the airport staff. And right now we're determining which department has the bandwidth to manage the project. For Cameron Park, we have the estimated construction start in June of 2024, and completion is slated for September. Coverly Field restroom project, we have building delivery and install is expected for fall 2024. And Robles Park Improvement Project, no updates since your last meeting. Next slide. Here you'll see also things that are on the roll forward. However, none of the changes since your last meeting. And that's the completion of the CIP and project updates. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Questions from the commissioners? Commissioner Oche?
Thank you, Chair. Quick question. I'm not sure if you know the answer, but I'm just curious to know, typically, how long does it usually take for a restroom construction project in a park? And I'm so excited to see the Coverly one is going to be installed in the fall of 2024. So happy to see that.
So is the question how long it takes, or is there a specific project that you wanted?
Just ballpark, just like, typically average, how long should it ideally take? 2, 3 years, 4 years? Just want to have a rough idea.
For the install?
For construction. So a
Oh.
park that doesn't have a restroom, that wants a restroom, typically how long will it take?
I think it depends on the design because Public Works is running these projects. So these updates were provided by that department. Depending if they are a prefab unit or they're actually being designed as built, it ranges. But you can see on some of the updates, for example, for restroom updates, the delivery and install is slated for June. So that means the project is definitely moving, but I can get you, if you're looking for the completion date, it is June of 2024.
Thank you.
I'm not sure, did that answer your question?
That would do for now.
Okay.
I can circle back with you. Yeah, thank you.
Commissioner Cribs?
Yes, thank you very much. Good work on the restrooms coming. That's great news. The skate park traffic study, do you have an idea how long that will take before we get some results back?
We are supposed to receive comments from the contractor this week.
I'm sorry, could you say that again?
We are supposed to receive comments back from the contractor who did the parking analysis this week. So they're responding to our planning department's comments.
And then what happens?
Then I'm not sure the next step, but
Okay.
yeah.
And then when will the stakeholders be contacted for the skate park, the planning? I think everybody was kind of waiting for the traffic study.
I think once it's finalized, so I think we're trying to understand once we've routed it to the other departments, finalized the document, then that will be shared.
Okay, thank you.
Vice Chair Freeman?
Yeah, just tagging back to what Commissioner Oche was asking. I believe that you had indicated previously that those are prefab restrooms, so the installation would be pretty quick, I guess. Do you know what the time frame is from the time it's delivered to the time that they're operational? I guess the question would be.
No. Yeah.
So thank you for that question. I don't like always answering it depends, but it depends on the site, on if they have to do a lot of underground work to connect existing utilities to the restroom. So I'm not exactly sure how that process is going underground, but once it's in place and it just takes the connection, I think that piece goes fairly quickly. It's a lot of prep work in advance that takes some time.
So I'm going to assume that there's some project plan in place that will show kind of what the characteristics are for that particular location
Mhm.
and whether or not there's going to be underground work. And you probably have kind of a benchmark as to how long that's taken in the past, right? And so.
Yes, yeah, and so like Sarah said, that these are public works projects, so I don't readily have the schedule available. We can certainly, next month when we come back, we can provide more information on how long the utilities piece takes versus delivery and then connection to the utilities till it's operational.
I'm just thinking that when we go out and let the public know that there's a time frame as to when these will be delivered, that they're probably going to be excited that they are being installed. And it would be nice to be able to kind of provide kind of an estimated time frame as to when they will be available for use, I guess.
Sure. And there are project signs at the location. So like at Rinconada Park, there's a project sign that talks about the project schedule and what's going to be happening there.
Okay. And just one last, on the golf netting, I think you said that was to make a determination as to who was going to pay for that? Is that
Correct. Which department had the bandwidth to take on the project? Because CSD staff met with the airport last week, and that was the update that was provided.
So is that generally the traditional way that that's handled? It's like whoever has the band, because I'm assuming you've done, golf netting before, so someone takes on the responsibility for it, I presume.
Yes, I think it's been common practice with public works as well as open space and parks, and it seems as though that's mirroring the same as what we're doing with the airport.
Okay, so when you talk about bandwidth, so someone has to make a determination as to whether it's the city or the airport, I guess it is, to say we have the bandwidth, and generally they're going to look at the other party being probably more to take on the responsibility than someone else, kind of human nature, I guess. How do you manage that?
I think it also has to do with who, for example, I believe the airport is asking for this project. So
It's
then
whoever has the vested interest, I guess.
I think that is taken into consideration as well.
Thank
Well,
you.
and it's who has the capacity. So, the airport is a city department. We're a city department who has the most capacity to lead a project and get it to the finish line.
Thank you.
Commissioner Wakefield?
Just following up briefly on the restrooms, I think one of the questions is how long, that's being phrased is how long from the time a restroom is approved by city council does it take to get installed? And certainly over the past few years with COVID and supply chain issues, it's been a lot longer than we would like. So if you're looking to answer that question, I don't know, hopefully some of these delays may be reduced, and so the answer might be there's going to be a range, but we've probably been on the outside of the range, and there might be hopefully be more on the inside of the range moving forward. Also, and then on another subject, I'm still looking for an update on the construction equipment at Pearson or Astudillo Preserve in the staging area. Looking for clarification on why it's still there and cutting to the chase when it'll be gone. And maybe this is, if you don't, go ahead.
I don't have an update on that.
Yeah, maybe when you get an answer, you could just email it to the commission. I've been asking about this for a bit. And I understand it's not a straightforward answer. That's not on the top of your head. Looking to get the information. That's all I have. And just thank you for the update on the project. It is very helpful.
Commissioner Kleinhaus?
Yeah, I was going to ask the same question about the equipment at the Restradero and why, like, what's the prognosis? Or how long it's going to be there? Why is it there? A few other things we discussed before. I think last time I asked if the mitigation on the golf course can be presented as one of the items that staff presents to us. And I think that Kristen, you said, yes, we can include it. So I hope that we actually get an update each time about the mitigation in the golf course. Last time also, Winter Dellenbach spoke about nighttime lighting along Ballpark, the creek path. And I don't know where that is, but I was hoping that we'd have a little information about whether that is actually to code the way those lights are connected to the trees and what can be done there. And the last one on my list is before Darren left, he started giving us a little bit of a nature corner, kind of highlight something that is happening or a species or something in our nature preserves. And I found that to be really comforting to know that there's attention to these things, and I was hoping that will come back. Thank you.
Commissioner Wei?
I just want to make a quick comment of your Friday additional staff working overtime to host the things. And I went there, not on the day, but went to the youth council. It turned out really well. I heard there's like high turnover, like 80 people each time, and there's even demand for more frequent. So really applaud your efforts for that, especially past the tragic incident in a month ago. The questions with, the day getting longer and summer is, spring, summer, whether you have also thought of using our park itself, if you have too many people to accommodate, even moving in the park, etc. Just a thought to food for thought.
Great. And I just want to say, I like the format with the bold updates, and I think that's very helpful to follow. Could you talk a little bit more about the work party, just for the general public, and sort of when that gets called into action, and just a little bit more details?
Sure. So it's our first one's tomorrow. So I think at next month's, we'll have photos to share, and I'm planning to talk to Kristen and hopefully get some, we've taken note that we'd like to get in some of the city managers' communications out. So hopefully we can also tie that in to reach the general public. But so we currently have a contractor who does the maintenance right now at Mitchell as well as Rinconada. We're planning tomorrow to sand down some of the picnic tables and then get fresh coats of paint. There will be a delineation between individual picnic tables, and then group picnic tables will be a different color. So kind of fresh coat of paint, brighten it up. Also, getting staff together. There's been some new faces, so that it's kind of getting everything fresh coat of paint, see how it goes. There's large picnic. Again, we're trying to clean up all of the picnic tables at Mitchell, and then we'll see what we get done. But we have back-to-back weeks planned, then we have a break, and then the following 2 weeks we'll, if needed, be at Rinconada or finishing up at Mitchell. So I'm anticipating that we'll have photos for next month to show you the before and afters.
And just to add, we've previously done these like in the Baylands. We've done some native plant plantings in the Baylands in years past. Like Sarah said, it's a way to get things done quickly and low cost when we don't have a budget to do it, and then also provide some team building too. So it's really been successful in the past. So I'm excited that we have more coming up.
That sounds great. Can't wait to see pictures. Any other comments? Commissioner Kleinhaus?
The same issue. In San Jose, when they do these kind of activities, they invite the public to participate as volunteers and people can join. So they do creek cleanups, all kind of stuff that I've seen. I don't know if you guys want to consider that, especially for something like native plantings, and you can get a lot of volunteers. Don't know about painting benches, but maybe.
It'd be good to get the team involved as well, right? High schoolers, etc., can work the youth service group. Yeah.
Great. Any other comments? Okay, thank you. Moving on to the next business item, which is the Quarry Road Transit Center project.
Sure. Thank you. So Philip Cami, our Chief Transportation Official, is on Zoom, and he is going to introduce our presenter and this topic. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Cami.
Thank you very much, Director O'Kane, and good evening, members of the Parks and Recreation Commission and members of the public. I'm Philip Cami, the Chief Transportation Official from the Office of Transportation. And tonight I'm joined by Leslie Lowe, who is Stanford's Director of Transportation and Environmental Planning. He'll be presenting on a project that the city and Stanford are partnering on, along with multiple public transit stakeholders that will utilize and will benefit from the proposed project. The project is designed to enhance public transportation by reducing travel time. And the project will also benefit non-transit users by reducing overall local traffic congestion. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Leslie Lowe.
Thank you, Philip. Good evening, commissioners. My name is Leslie Lowe. I'm the Director of Transportation Planning at Stanford University, and I'm here this evening to present the Quarry Road Connection Project on behalf of our partnership with the City of Palo Alto, as Philip so nicely said. Next slide. The Quarry Road Connection Project is a partnership with the city in concert with the 5 transit agencies that use the Palo Alto Transit Center, namely the VTA, the SamTrans, AC Transit, Dumbarton Express, and Caltrain. Caltrans and the Metropolitan Transportation Commission are also involved because of the regional significance of the transit station, as well as its connection to El Camino Real. Next slide. The Palo Alto Transit Center is the mobility hub of Palo Alto. It has the 2nd highest Caltrain ridership on the corridor. 4 public transit agencies serve the transit center to complement the Caltrans service, and it connects Palo Alto to San Mateo County, Santa Clara County, and the East Bay. Stanford's Marguerite, as well as other private shuttle services, provide last-mile connections to this transit center to campus facilities as well as employment areas. Next slide. Roughly 600 buses serve the transit center daily, using the 10 public bus bays at the transit center, as well as the curbside along University Circle for boarding and alightings. The Caltrain electrification is scheduled to begin in fall 2024, and electrification will alter the transit train service to every 15 minutes during the peak period, with 4 trains per hour in each direction, and 2 trains per hour in each direction during the off-peak periods, including the weekends. So bus and shuttle services will align with the new train service. The station is also a very significant source of bicycle trips on Caltrain. Bicycle-equipped passengers at the transit center are estimated at over 800 daily. Palo Alto has the 2nd highest bicycle riderships along the Caltrain corridor at roughly 14% of all bicycle boarding and alightings, second only to the 4th and King station in San Francisco. The buses are currently routed through University Avenue and University Circle. Buses, and particularly those articulated buses, so those longer ones, require additional turning radii to access the transit center from University Avenue, which causes regular delay and congestion on University Avenue. And it also creates additional conflict points for bicycles and pedestrians at the gateway to downtown Palo Alto. Next slide. As envisioned in the Palo Alto Comprehensive Plan, the proposed Quarry Road Connection project would create a direct transit connection between the transit center bus bays and the El Camino at Quarry Road traffic signal. And this would go through an underutilized portion of the El Camino Park. The proposed project would allow buses that use the bus terminal to exit via Quarry Road at El Camino Real rather than circling back through the University Avenue. The bus operators have estimated a time savings of 5 to 8 minutes per trip could be achieved by avoiding University Circle and directly connecting to Quarry Road at El Camino. Next slide. The El Camino Park consists of 10.75 acres of land leased by Stanford University to the city under a 1915 lease agreement that is set to expire in 2042. The park has been dedicated by the city by ordinance for recreation and conservation purposes. The proposed project would develop a strip of underused passive portion of El Camino Park to provide a direct transit connection to the transit center, where bikes and pedestrians already have access. This area of the park does not have playing fields, but does provide circulation that serves the park. The proposed transit connection could enhance the use of the park and the enjoyment of El Camino Park and those recreational amenities. Next slide. Article 8 of the Palo Alto City Charter governs the dedication of parks. Given that El Camino Park has been dedicated by the city for recreation and conservation purposes, a majority vote of the people is necessary to discontinue the park use on that portion of El Camino Park that would be used to facilitate transit circulation. Next slide. Designs for the transit connection are in very early stages, and all feasible options are under consideration. They range from connecting a full access intersection, which would give buses both in and out accessibility, as well as just doing an outbound only lane. Feedback on the ultimate design will be taken from those public transit agencies, stakeholders, as well as the public. There's a preliminary concept design that does allow for full access for the buses that includes 12.5-foot wide in and outbound transit lanes with 6-inch curb and gutter. It also has, those transit lanes are also separated by landscape median that ranges in width between 18 and 33 feet. The project would require almost a 1/4 acre of land to accommodate the transit circulation, including 1/10 of an acre of land for that landscaped median. The median, although part of the project area, would remain in its current state. Next slide. Because it's in conceptual stage, we would also go to the voters and request an additional slightly bigger area than we think we would need for the proposed project. And that would be about 1/3 of an acre. And this would give us a 10-foot buffer around the project in case there are modifications that are needed once we start getting into design. That way we don't have to go back to the people to ask for more land. And the idea would be that following the completion of the project design, the city would rededicate for park purposes that portion of the land that was not used for transit circulation. Next slide. So the landscape median, it ranges in width between 18 and 33 feet, and that is because it is designed to house the existing utilities that run through the park in this area. The utilities on the parcel includes the San Francisco PUC and city water, communication lines, electric lines, gas lines, and the traffic signal that is owned by Caltrans. Next slide. The project would also include multiple pedestrian and bicycle improvements within the El Camino Park and adjacent to the transit connection, as well as in the intersection of Quarry Road and El Camino. Specifically, the project would upgrade the crossing of El Camino Park to allow pedestrians and bicycles to use the El Camino intersection, to accommodate the pedestrians and cyclists on both sides of Quarry Road, which would reduce the crossing time.
Add safety and accessibility measures to the intersection of Quarry Road at El Camino, such as curb extensions, tighter turning radii, new pedestrian and bicycle ramps, pedestrian and bicycle refuge islands, and high visibility bicycle markings. Through these improvements, there would be enhanced visibility of the existing path that connects to the transit center, as well as the connection to the El Camino Park, the active part of the El Camino Park, through the transit center to the Embarcadero bike path, as well as to the Stanford Perimeter Trail. Connectivity improvements would also make the active park facilities at El Camino Park more accessible for bicyclists, pedestrians, and transit riders. Next slide. The bus route reorganization would have secondary benefits to University Avenue and University Circle by eliminating the need for some buses to make those constrained turning movements in the corridor, which would reduce congestion on University Avenue, creating more efficient traffic flow for buses, would also serve to reduce emissions of air pollutants and noise from vehicular traffic. Next slide. Over 600 buses go through the transit center daily, representing over 1,200 trips in University Circle when you account for the in and outbound trip. With the Quarry Road Connection Project, it is estimated that over 500 bus trips would avoid the circle, which is a 59% reduction. Next slide. The proposed project could require the removal of 15 trees, and there are an additional 3 trees in that project buffer area. The project could also include lighting, benches, signage, drought-tolerant planting, mulch, and tree planting. But the project's in conceptual stage, so we don't exactly know what it's going to look like, but any lighting and planting would be harmonious and compatible with the existing conditions at El Camino Park. Next slide. The project qualifies for a statutory exemption from CEQA for the transfer of passengers from or to exclusive public mass transit guideways or busway public transit service. And due to its fixed location, Caltrain qualifies as such. Staff continues to investigate whether there's any other CEQA exemptions that would also apply to the project. Next slide. So in the coming months, the Palo Alto City Council is expected to consider placing the proposed parkland discontinuance on the ballot for the fall 2024 election. And if the ballot measure passes, the city and Stanford will work with our transit agency stakeholders, Caltrans, and the public to further develop construction plans and apply for the necessary permits. Next slide. Thank you for your time and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Appreciate the presentation. This is a discussion item only. We'll begin with clarifying questions before going to public comment. Because it's discussion item, is there any specific elements that you would like the commission to focus on, their comments, or that your specific feedback that you're soliciting?
No, I'm just more curious to hear what your questions are at this point.
Okay, great. Any clarifying questions from the commission? Commissioner Oche, yeah.
I always have questions. Bear with me. Just a quick question to ask if we're going to be planting the balance of the 12 trees somewhere else, or do we?
I mean, at this point, we don't have any plans, but that could definitely be put on the roster of things to consider.
Commissioner Greenfield?
Is there a specific map that shows the park, the current dedicated park area that is proposed to be undedicated? And if not, that would be really helpful for us.
Yes, so we have a civil engineer that is working on the language and the exact map that will be presented to the city staff probably as early as next week. And it will include that buffered area.
Vice Chair Freeman?
Yes, good presentation. I have, I think you mentioned that in the report of 6 to 8 minutes. Was that for the number of bus runs? And did I see the runs were like 600 bus runs or something?
So
it'd be 6.6 to 8 per bus run. So when you total that, it really totals into a lot of time, right?
yeah, some bus operators, especially the Marguerite team, has told me that they would probably end up getting to take a bus out of service, which is great because a bus would be able to do the route so much quicker. And so they wouldn't have to run as many buses.
Okay, so that's a
It's a
real
huge
positive, I guess,
savings,
right?
yes.
Yeah. The other one on the site design constraints, where you laid out a number of things like utilities and cablings and so forth, is that something that you've kind of already dug into to see what the impact is going to be and whether or not there's any potential showstoppers there, I guess?
So the way we have done the early design was to try and avoid is moving the utilities because it's very expensive, especially to move like water utilities and such. So the concept design includes that landscape median so that we don't have to touch those. That was the whole point. So yes, the civil engineer who's working on the land survey and that piece has also done all that consideration as well, mapping all that.
Thank you.
Commissioner Cripps?
Yeah, I was confused about the Quarry Road extension. Is there a way to go to a map and have you do a pointer where that is? Or
Slide 11.
Is this,
perfect.
yeah, I don't know. I don't have a pointer, but
There was one that just came up and then it went away.
I think maybe the next few.
Yeah, it's at 12.
This one is probably helpful. So, I mean, if you look at kind of where that green line is, that's the VTA route. That's University Circle. And if you go underneath that, the up and down street, that's University Avenue right now. So what happens now is the buses are using the University Avenue and University Circle, and then they turn into the Palo Alto Transit Center. The Quarry Road Connection Transit Project is the black lines with the white diagonals through it. Yes, there. And so the buses would be able to come out there and make lefts and rights. And so they wouldn't have to go through the circle anymore.
Thank you. And
So-
then the second question is that in 1984, when the Olympics were here at Stanford Stadium, there was a grove contemplated that the city actually fulfilled. There were planted 6 redwood trees, and I believe they're close to the outfield of the ballpark, the hardball ballpark. And so I'm just wondering if those would go away. There was to be a monument too, but everybody ran out of money. So there wasn't a monument, but there were trees planted.
I don't believe that the redwood trees are in this location. We haven't done a tree report yet, but
Okay.
we did take pictures of the trees out there. I didn't see any redwood trees, but before we do any like final designs, we'll have an arborist report, I'm sure.
Thank you. I'm
and
sure it was a
know.
premature question, so thank
Yeah,
you.
but I appreciate knowing that that was the significance of those, so thank you.
Any other questions? Commissioner Way?
Thanks, Chair. So the current, I'm still looking at the same slide. So the future Quarry Road Transit Way would consolidate all the buses, including the Margarita, in the same location where you have the black line, the white. Is that right?
Yeah, so some of the buses, so all the public buses currently use the transit center, the
Yeah.
10 bus bays there. The Marguerites are private, and so they use the University Circle right now.
Yeah.
Those would likely, there are some that could directly go down University Avenue serving Palm Drive, and so those would probably not go down through the Quarry Road connection, but all of the shuttles that are serving the hospital would.
And all the VTA buses will go there too, using the future Quarry Road Transit
Yeah.
Way.
So, I mean, we were estimating of the 1,200 buses that we counted today, the in and outbounds, we were guessing just based on rerouting them in a way that we thought was logical. And we have not talked to our public transit agency partners to confirm that this is completely true. But we were estimating around 500 of the buses would be removed from the circle.
The second question is the patch, which will be the future transit way, which will be using the current park. Are they grassland or what are they right now?
Yeah, it's just
What's the
grasslands.
vegetation?
It's
Okay.
mostly grasslands. I think you can see it in the constraints slide. It
Before you
would,
change slides, if I can really quickly, I just wanted to note that I believe the redwoods on the, if you're looking at this slide where it says future Quarry Road Transit Way on the left, or on either of the slides, actually, it's got that box. There's trees just to the bottom of that box. I believe those are the redwoods. Just from having walked out there, just I wanted to note that quickly.
slide 14.
So the lost vegetation can be replaced somehow, the green grass and the trees to be removed
Yes, that would
in
be
a
right.
similar density, I presume.
Yes, that is, well, so the pavement part would be what, 12 and a half feet for if it was 2 lanes, it would be 12 and a half feet. So that part of the landscaping would go away. There may be opportunities once we've started working with Caltrans to understand how, once we start working on the curb radii and stuff, to add within the Caltrans right away, more plantings there.
Yeah,
But that piece we will not know until we get closer in design with Caltrans.
yeah, I'm just thinking of the consideration of air quality with all the buses. I'm not so sure they're all electrified yet and all
Not
the,
yet.
yeah, so the vegetation itself, the laws could be looking to compensation on that too.
Okay.
Just want
Thank
to
you.
pause here as we're getting into discussion to check if there's any public comment either on Zoom or in person.
I have more questions.
Chair, I'm seeing no hands raised online or in person.
Okay, we'll bring it back to Commissioner Kleinhaus.
There are some future projects that appear on the documents that we received, right? Potentially future projects. Is that included in the exemption from CEQA?
The future Everett Tunnel project?
Yeah, I mean, if you have a project, my understanding is that the project as a whole, anything that's envisioned as part of the project, which this seems to be, is one project and should be addressed by CEQA as a whole. So I wonder if you're looking at segregation of CEQA by doing this project and then in the future, potential addition parts of the project.
I think the Everett Tunnel project is a project the city is still considering and seeing if it's feasible. So it's not part of this project. I don't think it would be considered piecemealing under CEQA, but I would want a CEQA attorney to advise us on that.
I think you might want to look into
Thank
that.
you.
I don't know if these projects are depending on each other or not, and if you have to analyze them cumulatively or not, I don't know enough. But that's something I would like to know.
Okay.
The other questions were partially asked or asked by others, but I find the information a little confusing because it's so focused on only this area without a broader picture of where it is. So it's hard for people to understand, but within that, I was looking for the delineation of the park, definitely,
Okay.
and to understand the history of the park. So I'll get to some of that in my comments later, but I understand you don't have an exact delineation at this time.
We do not, but we are expecting that from our engineers next week, which will be sent over to city staff.
Okay, thank you.
We can go into comments now, Commissioner Kleinhaus, if you wanted to share. Okay, Vice Chair Freeman.
Just another clarification.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Yeah, sorry. So is the total acreage, pardon, 0.33, is that right? So that's everything. So that includes where the existing utilities are and so forth. So when you say it's an inactive part, that's what you're saying, because it has those utilities on it and so forth.
That's right. So the 0.33 includes the buffer area as well. So it's about a 1/4 acre, 0.24, if you include the median, the transit lanes, and then we buffered it with another 0.1 acre, so bringing it up to 1/3 of an acre, more or less, with the buffer. So we do believe that we'll be able to rededicate some of this land after the project is designed.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments?
No.
Yep. Go ahead, Commissioner Kleinhaus.
Okay, so the piece of paper I handed out is a map that I found related to ordinance number 2570 from 1970, which undedicated a parcel, which appears in this paper in dark. This was the Red Cross area, and the city undedicated it. I couldn't find anything else. This was the best description of where the park is. Now, when I look at, and I kind of put in red on this map, the MacArthur was there before too, and then this crossing would be this road. And while this may only be a quarter or a third of an acre on the spot, it bifurcates the park. And essentially, but in a way, makes the area between the existing parking and the area that was undedicated to this road, makes it kind of unusable. So, and when I try to measure how much that is, it's about an acre. So I think that the loss to Palo Alto of usable parkland potentially is an acre, not a quarter or a third of an acre. And that is, to me, that's significant. The other thing is that there are benefits to this for sure, right? But parkland is being lost. And so Stanford has a lot of land, and I think that Stanford should compensate the city. And that's an opinion, but that's what I'm here for, and provide parkland equivalent to the amount of 1 acre somewhere that is useful by the city as parkland, because this is not going to be. And even if you plant some trees and make it nice for, for connectivity, that's good. But we're losing parkland, which is really, really precious. And the city keeps trying to get more parkland, and here we're losing parkland. So Stanford should find a place to provide parkland. 1 acre.
Thank you for your comments.
Commissioner Greenfield?
Thank you, and thank you for the presentation and the report. There are certainly a number of compelling aspects of the project. I mean, it makes intuitive sense. And working to keep the median landscaped makes good sense too. It sounds like it's for practical purposes as well. I have a number of both general and specific comments. First, general question is for staff. Besides the Measure E site at Bixby Park, what precedent is there for undedicating parkland in Palo Alto? Do you know?
Yeah, thank you for that question. So we looked back to 2000, and the Measure E site was the only site since 2000 that has been undedicated. I did find some additional information on a portion of Rinconada Park that there was a land swap with the Palo Alto Unified School District near at Walter Hayes Elementary School. And then possibly back at way back to the Terman Park site. So those were the only ones that we could find in our short little research we did this afternoon.
Thank you. And Commissioner Kleinhaus mentioned a potential site. Sounds like it was undedicated at some point.
Wasn't there another one for a fire station?
That one I'm not sure about. I don't disagree that it happened. I'm just not aware of it.
So regardless, the undedicating parkland is a big deal. We have to go to the local electorate for that. We do, as a commission, as a community, we have concerns about our parkland and with the expanding population, increasing the need for parkland. But also looking to figure out how to get a ballot initiative to pass. We want to make it as palatable as possible for the public electorate. And so if there are opportunities to do some sort of a swap to increase to effectively barter some new parkland for the parkland we're undedicating, I think that would significantly help get this passed. And I did have questions similar to Commissioner Kleinhaus about it. Looking at the map, it looked like there would be segmenting and effectively orphaning part of the park area, and that is a concern. I think there was a estimate of the cost of this project. I'm wondering if that cost includes the ballot initiative expense as well.
That project cost was only about the construction,
Excuse me?
just about the construction.
Okay. So it would be helpful to incorporate in the ballot initiative cost as well for a big picture understanding. Okay, then as far as some of the specifics, it's as far as the actual layout, and I understand now that the median is set because of utilities. From the drawing in the presentation, it looks like the roads line up, the bus routes line up with Quarry Road. From the drawings in the packet, it looked like they were offset a little bit towards away from University Avenue. And so I'm not sure what the situation is, but if there's any way to slide things further towards University Avenue and then potentially reduce the amount of parkland that you're impacting, that would be a good, healthy consideration. I know part of that's going to be related to the turn of the buses from the depot area. I don't know if it's possible to shorten the island that you have for the buses right now to potentially reduce how far you're coming into parkland. And again, all this is related to taking away less parkland and potentially having to add less parkland and making everything more palatable for the community. So regarding the trees that are getting removed, it'd be helpful to get it sounds like a drawing's coming that would detail which trees are getting removed, and presumably there'll be mitigation plans to replant at least the number of trees that are getting taken down consistent with city practices. But it would be helpful to know where these are. The median, to talk about the median remaining in its current state, hopefully that the plans could improve the landscaping in the area. It's not a featured area at this point in time, and it'll become more prominent. And it seems like there'll be an opportunity to enhance this with the landscaping appropriate for a median. There were, you did comment that there's 750 to 800 bikes using the area today. In the report, it said those were pre-COVID numbers. I'm wondering what the current numbers are and how those have come back.
So I actually ended up looking at the transportation survey for Stanford University and the hospitals, and there were 800 people saying that they use the bikes to make their last mile connection from the transit center to the hospital and the university. So I'm assuming even people in Palo Alto are doing that. So I would think it's even upwards of 800.
So it sounds like things have bounced back to pre-COVID numbers. That's great. That's good news. Recognizing that the baseball softball field is already located between train tracks and El Camino, it's not a pristine nature area. But would there be any adverse impacts to the baseball softball field with the new proximity of the buses coming through there? I'm thinking really more like potential vibration issues that could impact things. You know, it's easy, the train, it's easy enough to kind of pause play when the trains go by, but if there's buses constantly circulating, that would be a concern.
I'm assuming most of the play happens on the weekends and the evenings when there's less bus traffic. So I think that part would be something to consider, but I would imagine that the buses are also driving on El Camino Real and they are already impacting the playing field as well.
My question just is this location relative to the fields, is it different from El Camino? It's probably not an issue. I'm just raising the question.
I mean, the buses are already circulating through the transit center there too, so it's about in the same general vicinity. So I don't think the conditions will be that much different for the users of the field.
I just think it'd be worth looking into, and hopefully it's not an issue. That's what I've got for now. Thank you.
Vice Chair Freeman? No?
Mr. asking, clarifying.
Or comments, either, both.
Okay. I'll go back to the 0.33 acres or whatever it is, and the existing utilities on that parcel, correct? Will those utilities be relocated, or, and if so, I'm assuming that have to be relocated somewhere else in the park, if I'm looking at that correctly.
So the way the concept design is designed at this moment is that it's designed to just keep the utilities where they are.
Okay.
That's why the median is so large.
Okay. All right.
So, I mean, ideally, we would not have to relocate them because that would really will probably make the project infeasible because it would be very expensive.
So they wouldn't have to be moved to a different location in the park?
Yeah, I mean, if they were moved, they would be moved within the park is still.
Okay.
They wouldn't, yeah, they would need to stay on that side of the road, I'm sure.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Kleinhaus?
Thank you. So I have a couple more things. One, you mentioned that lighting and plants will be harmonious with El Camino, and I find that needs a little updating there. So I think that lighting should be very minimal and very much with the dark sky ordinance that is going to be developed here in this year in Palo Alto, and also look at the Dark Skies, International Dark Sky Association as a minimum. In terms of plants, trees should really be native trees. I don't know what's planted on El Camino, but we need to look at native trees and move away from planting other things. And one additional comment based on what Jeff said. I'm more worried about young kids playing in an area that has a lot of air pollution. And so if CEQA is not required to analyze that, would the city or Stanford be providing analysis, not through CEQA potentially, but how would that affect vulnerable populations of young people playing on these sport fields over there? So just because without CEQA, we don't really have a way to know.
Yeah, though the project should reduce the number of buses. So they're still in the general air basin. So I would imagine that the air pollutants should go down.
They usually look
Additionally,
at the
a lot of
distance.
the buses are also moving to electric buses. And so that will also reduce the air pollutants as well. So, but this is something we can look into and discuss with city staff.
Thank you.
So a couple questions. You mentioned oh, sorry, go ahead, Philip.
Sorry, Chair, I've had my hand raised for just a little while, and I don't mean to interject, but if I could just share some context from the Office of Transportation.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, and maybe you'll ask one of these questions that I was about to share, but just on a few prior comments and questions, I just wanted to share that first that the 2018 fleet rule for transit agencies requires that all public transit agencies gradually transition to 100% zero emission bus fleet by 2040. And most transit operators are already taking steps towards that. So I did want to mention that in relation to the question, well, many questions about the air quality and being next to the fields, and also zero emission buses. And so I also want to note that with the buses, doing less travel in the area, the air quality actually improves even with the existing fleets. And so this proposes a pathway to less vehicular travel, in particular for the buses in this area, because they're doing less turning movements. And then I also just want to note that this is really a partnership project between the city, Stanford, and potentially all the transit agencies. The land ownership in this area is really, really complex. But this, just to note that the city believes that there's an environmental benefit, a public transit benefit, and a local traffic congestion benefit for this project. So I'm just saying that in relation to the question or comment about an exchange of parkland. I'm just want to note that everybody's receiving a potential benefit from this. And currently, this is not parkland that I would consider as very usable park space. It's really some green land that is next to a transit center right now, and will potentially be or can be beautified through this project. So just want to share that's the Office of Transportation perspective on this project.
Thank you. Appreciate the comments. I did have a question going back to the lease agreement on the land. Is there any sort of pre-baked in extensions, or is that sort of the?
I mean, I am not in the real estate department, but it seems to me that it has been extended multiple times because you guys have had that lease for over 100 years. So,
yes. Okay. And then I just want to echo what some of my colleagues said about it does, whether or not it's usable or not, it does sort of slice right in the middle of a site. So I understand the trade-offs of it provides more access to the parkland. So that I'm all for, and making it easier to get to the parkland, or even getting from Stanford Shopping Center to downtown, to the park, to the bike path, and understand the holistic view of it. I did find the presentation of the information difficult to understand what's being proposed versus what's existing versus what is a potential future project but doesn't have a set date. So I know it's incomplete information, or we're waiting on engineering drawings, but just to clarify that for the general public as this gets further down the road, I think that would be helpful. And then the other thing I wanted to add is, though it may not be usable parkland, it may not be the greenest, or maybe compared to El Camino Park, right? The actual parkland itself. But this was sort of considered, I think, at one point for either a dog park sort of pilot project or some sort of pop-ups, but it was told to the commission that this should not be considered because there was a future project coming. So it would not only be the loss of the use of the parkland in the future by undedicating it, but we've also sort of had our hands tied in what we can consider using for space up until this point, because this project had been considered in some way, shape, or fashion. So there has been some sacrifice already made by the park use of the site. Those are just my comments. Any other comments from the commission?
Yes, real quickly, I just was interested in the plans for communication, how that's going to work with the partnership between the city and Stanford in terms of communicating with the residents.
I will have to defer to city staff on that one.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I just want to say that I think we're still trying to develop that at this time.
Okay, any other closed comments from the commission? All right, thank you very much. We appreciate your time. Okay, moving on to the next item, which is the bicycle and pedestrian transportation plan update.
Thank you for being patient while we did a little musical chairs there. So I would like to introduce again Ozzie Arce and his colleague to give an update on the bicycle and pedestrian transportation plan. So I'll turn it over to you.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Ozzie Arce, Senior Transportation Planner. I'm joined here tonight by Amanda from Kittleson and Associates, the consultant on this project, as well as Sylvia Starlack, in the back, Transportation Planning Manager in the Office of Transportation. I hope you remember us from late last year introducing this effort, the Bicycle and Pedestrian Transportation Plan Update, also known as the BPTP update. Real quick, last update was in 2012, and we introduced the effort last time, but today, as you can tell from the staff report, we're providing a lot of more detailed information and existing conditions analysis, presenting the draft vision, performance measures and the goals, but really wanted to let you all know that the existing conditions phase is a phase that many long-range planning efforts go through, as sets the foundation and as a baseline information for which we take off from to develop the priorities that ultimately make it into the plan. So again, tonight, I know we're providing you with a lot of information, but if we're going to ask you to focus your efforts on providing us feedback tonight, it would be the vision, the goals, and those performance measures, and then we're establishing a deadline of April 12th to provide us with any more comments or questions that you may have. So that'll be it for me today, tonight for the presentation, and Amanda's really taking the lead on it. So appreciate your time with us, and it's about a 20-minute presentation. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Ozzie. Hi, everyone. I'm Amanda Leahy with Kittleson and Associates, Associate Planner there and leading the development of this bicycle and pedestrian transportation plan. It's nice to see you all again. We met with you
Amanda, could you
last-
speak into the mic a little bit?
Sure. And
Thank you.
yeah, thanks. And next slide, please. So we met with you last in January to share an overview of the BPTP update, our initial engagement plan, invite you to participate in outreach activities. Thank you to those who showed up at Bike Palo Alto and joined us at the visioning workshop. We also requested your input on the existing bicycle facilities maps, and we have taken your feedback and updated the map. The revised version is attachment A in your packet. Today, we are here to share the existing conditions analysis. We will also share a summary of engagement activities to date and preview what's upcoming. We invite you all to share the info with your neighbors and friends and join us at future events. Participation is critical. Lastly, we'll present the draft vision and objectives that Ozzie just mentioned. And these were developed through prior planning work in the city and with direct input from that community visioning workshop held in January. We will come to you one more time in fall 2024 to share the draft recommendations and seek your input and comments on those as well. Next slide. When we met last, we had some really solid discussions. You asked excellent questions. This table captures the general feedback we heard and presents the actions we have taken so far. So again, we updated that existing facilities map. We extended the timeline for the interactive map and got a bunch of additional comments from that are really useful to us. We are currently developing the performance measures for the plan, and that's something that we are seeking your feedback on in this meeting and by April 12th. And we are drafting a glossary of key terms to make sure we have a shared understanding of language in the plan document. Next slide. Today, we will cover a lot of ground in the presentation, and you have a pretty big packet of material to go over, but we do really want the focus to be on the vision, objectives, and performance measures, considering how these statements align with your goals and priorities, where there might be conflict and what might be missing. Next slide. So moving on to the technical analysis summary. Next slide. We have completed the majority of the baseline conditions analysis, which sets the foundation for our network recommendations and prioritization. And today I'll be sharing results from the bicycle level of traffic stress analysis, the major barriers analysis, and the collisions analysis. Next slide. Starting off with bicycle level of traffic stress, this is a concept I introduced last time we met. This graphic, I think, does a nice job of illustrating the types of facilities. And when I say facility, I mean a bike lane, a protected bike lane, an off-street pathway. So the type of infrastructure that might be used to support biking. So you can see on the left, we're looking at facilities which are limited to markings or signage and don't provide dedicated space for cyclists. They might be less comfortable to ride on. And then on the far right, you see the off-street pathway, which provides more separation and space for people walking and biking in that case, and might be comfortable for somebody of all ages and abilities to travel on. Next slide. And that loosely corresponds to the level of traffic stress ratings. The level of traffic stress ranges from 1 to 4, with the 1 being the low stress facility, and that is similar to Bryant Street on the left, and then all the way over to the higher stress facilities, level of traffic stress 4. And the image we're showing here is on San Antonio Road at Middlefield, where you can see there's a bike sharrow on the ground, but no physical separation, and high vehicle volumes and speeds. Next slide. The graphic on the right is the level of traffic stress results we mapped for the city, and it shows all of the streets in the city and the corresponding color for level of traffic stress, with green being 1 and red being LTS 4, those high stress facilities. And you can see El Camino, Alma, Oregon, San Antonio, and Foothill are the highest stress roadways in the city. There are a number of low stress streets. In fact, the majority of street miles in Palo Alto are considered lower stress, but these are the neighborhood routes that might be disconnected from destinations you want to go by a high stress segment or intersection. And that really prevents people from choosing to walk or bike when they have to cross one of these stressful facilities. Next slide. The barriers analysis examines 2 types of barriers that force people to take detours and generally increases the length of their walking trips. The linear barriers are shown on the right, and those are freeways and creeks and rail lines. And the barriers near transit are mapped on the left. And the analysis looks at gaps in pedestrian facilities, like where there might be sidewalks or curb ramps missing, and the street network itself, so how connected the streets are. And we're looking at major transit stops, which are rail stations and high frequency bus stops. Next slide. So here you can see one of the example outputs from the analysis. The map symbolizes the detour needed along each barrier. So the darker areas are where people wanting to access destinations on either side might have a longer route to travel. And this could indicate a newer upgraded crossing may be warranted in those dark purple areas. So here for US 101, you can see that there is a general lack of crossing opportunities. Those colored circles show the level of traffic stress rating at the intersections. And the lack of crossing opportunities there results in almost a 4-time increase in travel distance for people wanting to connect on either side. Next slide. We looked at 10 years of collision data to get a longer term picture of collision trends over time. And you can see in these charts, based on the 10 most recent years of data, there has been a general decrease in the number of pedestrian and bicycle involved collisions from peak of PED collisions around 37 or 40 in 2014 and 2018. And then that dropped down to 6 reported collisions in 2022. And a similar story for bicycle involved collisions with kind of peaks in 2015, 2018 with around 100 collisions in those years, and then dropping down to 16 in 2022. The number of fatalities has remained relatively consistent between 2 and 5 PED involved fatalities and a maximum of 7 bicycle collisions and resulting in a fatality over that 10-year period. Next slide. We took a closer look at the collisions that have occurred within the last 5 years. And there were a total of 104 pedestrian involved collisions and 257 bicycle involved collisions reported over that time period. Around 12% of the pedestrian involved collisions resulted in a fatality or severe injury, and around 5% of bicycle involved collisions resulted in a fatality or severe injury. You can see those shown on the map in the, so pedestrian collisions are yellow and bike collisions are red on this map. You can see the concentration in areas of higher pedestrian and bicycle activity downtown and along key corridors. Next slide. The pedestrian involved collisions, similar to that 10-year look, in this 5-year look, you can see a downward trend. The chart on the left shows the number of collisions in each of those 5 years by collision severity. So from minor injury to moderate injury in green, severe injury in yellow, and then fatality in blue. And then the collision locations for pedestrian involved collisions are shown on the right. Again, you can see the clustering downtown and then around schools. And next slide. Bicycle involved collisions are a similar story with the downward trend in the number and severity of those collisions. And then here you can see again, more collisions downtown, but then on those higher stress roadways as well. Next slide. Next slide. So I mentioned our phase 1 engagement activities. We engaged with folks in many different ways throughout phase 1. We received almost 1,000 unique comments on the interactive map, and that is an impressive amount of engagement across the 2+ months while it was live. We also attended the Bike Palo Alto event and hosted a visioning workshop and met with 7 committees and commissions. We received feedback on the materials that we shared out, the existing facilities map primarily, and then also just generally got a sense for what was top of mind for people. Safety was a top priority, as well as demand for high quality infrastructure and across barrier connections. Next slide. In phase 2, we'll be meeting with the same groups of committees and working groups. So we're here today, March 26th with you all. Tomorrow we'll meet with the internal staff working group and the Planning and Transportation Commission. On Thursday, we'll meet with City School, and then we'll have City Council in April. We will also be leading a multi-day community work session that begins on Tuesday, April 16th with the Bicycle Network Development Workshop, and then continues with a walking tour and a biking tour. And then we'll have some flyers out at Earth Day as well, promoting the plan and getting feedback there. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So I wanted to take some time to share this draft vision statement. This was the end product of that visioning workshop that I mentioned. And I will read it out loud to you and ask you all to consider, again, what might be missing, what might align with the work you all are doing, and what might strengthen this vision statement. In Palo Alto, we envision a city where sustainable transportation thrives, embodying safety, efficiency, and enjoyment. Our streets will form a connected, cohesive network supporting walking and cycling with tree-lined paths, efficient shortcuts, and secure bike parking. We commit to overcoming barriers, ensuring every part of our community is easily traversed on foot or by bike, fostering a connected region where sustainable transportation is a shared priority. Palo Alto aspires to be a leader with comprehensive programming, encouraging everyone to embrace sustainable modes. We invest more in walking and biking infrastructure, ensuring equity and accessibility for all. Embracing the safe system approach, our city prioritizes safety and aims for a future where walking or biking for short trips is more convenient than driving, shaping a city where every journey, no matter how small, contributes to a more sustainable and connected community. I will share a few thoughts on the vision statement. We formed this out of that visioning workshop I mentioned, and I hope that you can hear in it certain buzzwords that really do connect to what we'll be talking about next, these draft objectives and performance measures. The idea is that this vision statement supports the outcomes that we want from this plan and is reflective of the city's goals. And so also aligns with other plans and documents relevant to this group. Okay, next slide. The draft objectives are organized in 5 topic areas: safe and inclusive, connected and accessible, comfortable and enjoyable, community-driven, integrated, and collaborative. And these objectives will tie to those performance measures to help support the goals and create something that can be measured against. These are also, the language here is also important, as with the vision statement. So it is something that we do appreciate you spending your time reviewing and sharing your feedback with us. Next slide. I recognize that this slide is pretty small text, hard to see. We encourage you to look at your attachment Q here and provide feedback on that PDF document. This slide illustrates how the objectives tie back to the 2012 plan and to the work we presented to you a few months ago on the bike-friendly communities objectives, as well as how it aligns with the objectives that we just reviewed from this visioning workshop. Next slide. And for next steps, next slide. Again, we're just asking you to review the vision objectives and performance measures, and then with extra time, if you have the interest and capacity, to also take a look at the maps that we produced from the existing conditions and needs analysis. Next slide. And we will incorporate comments on the draft analysis and be promoting and preparing for those phase 2 events. And we hope to see you there as well. All right, that's it for my presentation. Look forward to your feedback, your comments.
Thank you for your wonderful presentation. Let's begin with clarifying questions before opening up for public comment. Okay, no question. Oh, Commissioner Kleina?
Yeah, what data is modeled by a replica? Like what types of pedestrians or bicycle users are in here? The reason I'm asking is that it looks like for bicycles, the highest percentage was schools and college, followed by shopping, work, and so on. And then for pedestrians, it's shopping, work, and restaurants. But when I'm in the neighborhood, most of what I see is just people walking for exercise, walking their dogs. A lot of people just walking to walk. And I'm sure bicycles, people are biking to bike, not for a destination. So I was wondering if those are in these numbers, or you're only looking at trips that end up in a destination, whether it's a school or shopping or whatever it is.
Yes, I can take this one. So good observation. The replica data does not consider those recreational trips that have the same starting and end point. So trips to walk a dog are not counted here.
That would miss most of the pedestrians in Palo Alto.
Commissioner Wei?
Thanks, Chair. So in your slides, you have this unsuitable bike lane for AA facility, and there's the other one suitable. Is there any data for Palo Alto? How many are unsuitable? How many are suitable? That's question one. And the second is, there's probably a bit more future consideration. What's the total coverage we will have for the suitable AA facility for Palo Alto? What does it look like in terms of timeline? Would it be built within a year, 2 years, 3 years?
We have, in the existing facilities inventory, we do have mapped the types of facilities. We haven't classified them according to this scheme as suitable or unsuitable. So we don't have the mileage numbers yet. The second question, can you repeat that for me?
So is there a plan or action item to make Palo Alto a more bikeable city in terms of installing the suitable facility for us?
Yes.
Say 60% or 80% or?
I see, like a target.
Yeah.
That is what the feedback we're hoping to get as part of this round is related to the performance measures, if there are specific targets. And one of the performance measures that we have preliminarily identified is the facility lane miles for like low stress facilities, for example.
So the low stress, if we make all the low stress facility available, is that a question of sort of capital need, or is it question of how to implement taking a long time? What will be the challenge?
Those will both be challenges.
Okay.
Yep.
Have we thought of, that's probably think far too ahead, like private-public partnership with all the banks around, et cetera, they can contribute to the capital campaign?
That's a great strategy. I think that will be part of what we do look at, yeah.
Yeah, and I think cities already have existing development agreements with certain projects that do look to install active transportation facilities as part of their development agreement. Just going back to your first question around unsuitable and suitable, I think in terms of looking at it, you could look at it from less from that suitable versus unsuitable and more versus in terms of the a level of traffic stress, LTS, and that's that following slide that speaks to LTS 1, 2, 3, and 4 and provides examples of local roads that are defined as such. And one would argue that maybe you want to enhance a certain type of level of traffic stress facility in a neighborhood. For example, level of traffic stress 1 that may be more suitable, right, for that neighborhood characteristic type. So I would encourage you to look at it more in the LTS perspective rather than the suitable and unsuitable as well.
And how do we improve that?
Through planning efforts such as these that prioritize projects, and then ultimately the city has a priority list that then they look to install and implement through capital investment programs or, again, these development agreements.
Thank you. Great presentation. Thank you.
Commissioner Greenfield.
Yes, I have a quick clarifying question regarding trip data and level of traffic stress, et cetera. How do you make seasonal adjustments to these data points? You know, obviously in warmer weather, there's more people out on bikes, there's more pedestrians. How do you balance? It sounds like you're taking data samples on a very limited number of days. Is this happening in all different seasons? And how does this apply to how we're trying to use this information?
The replica data set that is summarized in the staff report is modeled data from 1 month, and it is from what would be a higher ridership or walking month just based on the weather we'd expect. But there is no seasonal adjustment to that model data that's reflected in the staff report. And there are studies out there that for pedestrian and bicycle data specifically that do present methods for seasonal adjustments based on count data that might be available. The city doesn't have a wealth of information when it comes to on the ground counts. That is something that we're looking to expand on and create a more robust count program for the city that will look at times of day, days of week, weekday versus weekend possibly, and collect data during different times of the year so that we can start building a better model and just better understanding the characteristics of walking and biking trips.
So a couple of follow-ups. One, it sounds like the bike parking observation period was 10 to 4 p.m. on December 14th.
Yes.
That doesn't sound very representative of a warm day. I don't know what the weather was on that particular day. And then still trying to understand how you're trying to, in the big picture, how you're trying to use this data and what there's a lot of effort going to collecting it and compiling it, which I appreciate. But what's important? What aspects are important for how we're using it, and what doesn't matter so much?
Yeah, good question. The bike parking inventory was separate from the activity counts or the modeled activity data. And the bike parking inventory was more to collect inventory versus utilization. And we collected in December because we wanted to collect the data early on in the plan process. It was fair weather, actually, on that day. It wasn't one of the rainy weeks. And we did try to avoid rainy weeks. The replica data, how are we going to use it, or how are we going to use the count activity data more generally? It's mostly to understand where people, the origins and destinations of the trips, the types of people who are walking and biking, and to help inform and prioritize investments in location where there is the greatest need. And we understand the limitations as well. And so it will be a small piece of everything that we're looking at, but still an important piece. And so we do want to supplement it as best we can with a number of sources.
Thank you.
Any other clarifying questions? Right, do we have any public comment on this item?
Chair, we do have one in-person speaker and one hand raised online at this time. Mark, you have 3 minutes to speak.
Thank you. My name is Mark Shull. I'm 68 and I'm a resident of Palo Alto since 1983. My bike is a primary mode of transportation. I'm very concerned about bike safety and protected bike routes. I'd like to talk to this body about this body's position on AB 1909, the Omnibike Safety Law. First, biking is dangerous in Palo Alto, and the city has almost no physically protected bike routes. 10 years ago, I was knocked off of my bike by a car that didn't stop at Bryan and Churchill. Several months ago, I went down hard on the tracks at Churchill, avoiding a car. My helmet hit the pavement extremely hard in both cases, and I landed very close to a car. Earlier this year, a friend from Brisbane was killed in the exact same circumstances. Second, biking is increasingly intercity, particularly with e-bikes, which today puts riders on major streets to get from one city to another, or at least effectively. This is particularly true for those who commute to work by bike, and 60% of Palo Altans work outside of the city, not to mention the numbers who commute in. We need safe intercity bike corridors, including e-bikes, which is a large part of what AB 1909 tried to address, and it is why park service roads are critical. The city of San Jose immediately embraced AB 1909. Its website states, quote, "Our goal is for bicycles to account for 20% of all trips citywide by 2050. To help us reach this goal, the state of California passed AB 1909. The bill improves safety, equity, access conditions for people riding bikes. And speaking of equity, an e-bike is what many people can afford. If someone lives in East Palo Alto and has a job at Google in Mountain View, taking an e-bike to work on the Park Service Road is a practical way to get to work. It's also how I get safely to San Jose. Nobody is asking for e-bike access on park paths or trails, just the service roads. I'm sympathetic to the issue of native habitat. My wife and I are gardeners who have planted only native plants at our home for over 25 years. But it seems incongruous for a park with a golf course adjacent to a city-owned airport that predominantly dispenses leaded gas to then argue that e-bike commuters are beyond what it can accommodate. I've heard a lot about risk, but it's bike riders on unprotected bikes, on unprotected roads that are being killed or at risk. And that is what AB 1909 tries to get cities to address. For these reasons, I am asking that Parks and Recreation reconsider its interpretations of AB 1909 only on specific service roads, or at least consider discussing the matter further. Thank you.
Scott, you've been unmuted and you have 3 minutes to speak.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. My name is Scott Mace. I'm a resident of Monterey County, recently a resident of Santa Clara County, longtime resident there. I represent CABO, the California Association of Bicycling Organizations, which is focused on cyclist rights, safety, training, and education statewide. We're the only statewide initiative to train law enforcement officers on the bicycling aspects of California traffic law. I frequently visit Palo Alto and bicycle there. I have a question for city staff, for the consultants, and for this commission. Given the number of streets in Palo Alto that will continue to have essentially no bicycling infrastructure and therefore shared streets, not to mention shared intersections, is there any education element in this new bike plan? Not just safe routes to school, but education for adults as well. Thank you.
Chair, I see no more hands raised online or in person.
All right, thank you. And thank you to our speakers. Bringing it back to the commission for comments. Vice Chair Freeman?
Yes, very good presentation. I don't know if this is a clarifying question. On your breakdown between level 1, I guess, to level 4, which I think you're calling it your stress, and you had the 10-year collision history. Do you have a breakdown of those different levels as to the different types of accidents and whether they were fatalities or that type of situation?
Yes, we do have a breakdown of different collision factors, primary collision factors. We also have looked at what time of day the collisions have occurred. Is that the type of breakdown?
Well, I'm
you're-
asking, like, say, if the majority of your accidents occurred in level 1 or level 2 or level 3,
I
it gives
see.
you kind of a, where you need to sort of focus your attention on, right? And whether or not
Yes.
that was a serious
Yes.
accident and so forth over that period of time.
Yes, we could overlay the collision locations on the level of traffic stress map. I think, is that what you're suggesting? So we can see where the collisions align with the level of stress?
With the level of stress,
Yeah.
right? Right.
Yep, we could do that. I don't have a graphic here, or I don't have stats to share with you right now, but we could.
Yeah. And the other would be whether or not those accidents were the bicyclist or the automobile. That gives you kind of a breakdown as to whether or not it's the automobile that's causing most of the injuries, or it's the bicyclist, maybe because of the type of roadway it is that leads to more accidents.
Right, so we do also have that breakdown of the officer's report, basically, of if it was a bicyclist right-of-way violation or if it was some other type of preceding event.
And I guess the other would be looking at accidents that occur on streets that are not designated as biking streets, and whether or not they're, that would be, I guess, lead to the possibility that maybe that corridor should be. I mean, if you have X number of bicyclists taking a street that is not marked as a bicycle-friendly street, is that a candidate for a possible look in your plan to make that so?
Yes, exactly. Yep. Yes, we will be looking at that and considering that to identify the project recommendations.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Krebs? No. Commissioner Kleinhaus?
I have a few things. I need to kind of figure out which one I want to bring first. You identified several barriers. Some of those are creeks. When you connect for one type of user, you sometimes disconnect for another, as you see with the rail and roads and all that. Creeks are important to users that are not human. And so I think that when you consider where to connect, you need to consider that sometimes we shouldn't. And I can't tell you by this map where exactly yes or no, because some places, it makes total sense. I gave an example last time on Grove, for example. I don't know if it's in your documents, but sometimes it makes sense and the creek is not going to be impacted too much. But other times, especially on the less developed areas of the creek, it may be very, very impactful. So I don't know if I think, so that kind of bugs me a little bit in the draft vision statements. We look at overcoming barriers when the barriers are identified as creeks. Potentially just you want to facilitate movement and you don't need to identify specific things. So that's one comment. The other relates to my previous question. Since the people who mostly use the roads and the sidewalks and just walk to the park or walk just to walk or walk their dogs, which really there's a lot of that in Palo Alto. So the project that will stem from this plan, sort of related to what Commissioner Greenfield was saying, just want to make sure that they actually help the community that is using it on every day around their home or not really with a destination. And so potentially I would look for some kind of conflict analysis. Is there conflict? Maybe not. Maybe it's all makes sense and there'll never be a conflict. But if the investment takes away from the neighborhoods and goes into more that commute in the future, for example, and I'm not opposed to that, but I'm just saying it needs to be clear. So we need to know if there's any kind of tensions between the use of just the community as a whole and the needs of destinations. And I have a question, which is a little, it's hard to read the maps. Is East Meadow Circle one of the places that continues to have issues?
There are at least collisions reported on.
Can you
East
speak to the
Meadow.
microphone?
Yes, there are many collisions reported on East Meadow. Do you have the map pulled up of the?
It would be on East Meadow and which
Oh, I was looking for the citywide LTS. That's the intersections. Okay, so it's showing up as an LTS 3 right now, which is a higher stress facility.
Yeah, that circle today, every time I go through there, it's like, it's dangerous. People don't stop at the stop sign.
Yeah.
And they don't know who goes first and they get confused with all these. It's a problem that needs to be fixed.
We've been getting a lot of
All right.
feedback about Meadow.
I looked at briefly at the draft objectives and I think they're good with one small suggestion on the first one. Prioritize safety for all road users. I think I would take the road users out. I don't think you need those 2 words, and they kind of don't really talk about the other things that are not roads. So I would take that out and just the rest of it is fine. With the vision statement, I think it's a little, I don't know, a little clunky. The word sustainable appears 3 times. There's big words where you could make it a lot simpler and more emotional, which I think vision statements should be. So when you talk about sustainable transportation, yeah, obviously, but if you just talk about that this is a place for people to walk and bike, it's actually what you want. These big words are not necessary, or maybe that's what it is. It just seems like a little heavy and a little too condescending, I would say, in the second part. Encouraging people is good, and using the word encouragement is good, but this is a little aggressive, I would think. So I'll let you play with this if you want, just comments. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I just have a question. When you're looking at sort of solutions in the next phase of this, you have the level of stress as a segment of the different roads, but do you look, because obviously Palo Alto is very diverse in its roadways and landscape, when you're looking at those solutions, are you able to further segment like the width of the road or sort of the natural landscape around it when you're looking at solutions, not sort of a one size fits all across the entire city? And how is that done? Just curious in terms of like the next step.
Yes, we are able to look at the different roadway characteristics, the number of travel lanes, whether there's a parking lane, if there's a sidewalk. I don't think we have very granular data on street trees or landscaping, but we will be considering those opportunities and generally looking at what can fit and what would require more right-of-way or more major roadway reconfiguration.
That's helpful. Thank you. And then just getting back to the discussion points, I very much agree with Commissioner Kleinhaus about the length of the vision statement. It did read very long, and I know it's hard when you have a lot of cooks in the kitchen and they have ideas. You want to keep it all in there, but I would be in favor of streamlining that if possible. And on the performance measures, generally liked them. It did seem like it was fairly heavy in workload indicators, so just pure numbers and yes or no, which I think is helpful background, but I kind of wanted to see more specifics on the efficiency of the programs as well as the effectiveness. So how those workload measures really translate into the success of the program, and maybe even baking in potential survey data or any existing survey data that's out there with the community survey that's related to bike and ped that could be fed into this as effectiveness measures, or any sort of just solicitation to really get at whether or not these programs are successful rather than just numbers or percentages, if that's possible. Those are my comments. Commissioner Greenfield?
Thank you for coming back to meet with us again and seek our input. Thank you for your detailed presentation. Looks like quite a week you have on your schedule, a bit busy times, so appreciate that. The drop in collisions is very encouraging. Obviously, we want to try to reduce the serious collisions, and I think that's. I guess when I was asking, what are we trying to, how are we trying to use the data? That's maybe one of the big endpoints or the major goals we're aiming for. I have some comments about the plan in general, and then some specific examples to ask about. Regarding the draft vision statement, I think it is on the long side. It's touching a lot, which is good to encompass. One thing that I think is missing is reference to education. I know that education is included under the community-driven objectives, but I think education is really important to the success of this. It's related to helping people understand how traffic features are used or intended to be used. It can help and help people understand the benefits of the programs, and it can hopefully engender greater support for transportation initiatives throughout the city. So I think touching on education would be helpful. Regarding the level of traffic stress or LTS ratings, helpful to understand the purposes better. Are there time of day considerations built into this? A real obvious example that's close to me is looking at Waverly Street near East Meadow. If you're ever there when school gets out at JLS and Fair Meadow, that is not a level 1 LTS for sure. No chance. I mean, it's a relatively narrow street. There are speed humps, but there's young kids without a great traffic sense starting all over in between cars.
Yeah, great point. And the quick answer is it looks at average daily traffic volumes and doesn't look at the peaks throughout the day. So it's more of an average level of traffic stress. When there are concentrated peaks, it can be higher stress. And also when there's very low traffic volumes, it can be higher stress because the drivers that are out there are driving faster. And so those conditions are not reflected.
So if we're aiming to identify hotspots, trouble areas, why aren't we more focused on peak data, which seems to be where the problems are going to occur?
Yeah, it is a good question. And I think we have to fill in the gaps in the analysis with input from the community. And we are limited in the data that we have and the methodologies that are implemented to conduct the analysis. So those types of conditions, the peak concentrations or event centers, that have very differing characteristics, those are things that would come out through community input.
So how would you like to receive community input? Would you like specific examples like this pointed out for you to consider? And would you adjust the LTS level based on that input?
I don't think we'd end up adjusting what we've mapped. We could map something in addition to it, I suppose, if it needed to be visually presented. But we would certainly appreciate feedback in any form you want to give it.
So if you're soliciting feedback from the community, you're going to have to give the community a good understanding of how this feedback is going to be used. And if it's not going to just that map, maybe you need an overlay map, maybe you need a exclamation mark map. I don't know what it is. I know you have the you had the interactive map, and
Right.
that's an opportunity for things, but it's something to improve on. Just kind of a general question. It's very interesting to see some of the multimodal transportation data and the high use groups and all. As we look to increase the use of multimodal transportation, is there more, what are we prioritizing? One thought is you can improve the use and accessibility for the frequent user groups, the people who are groups who are already drinking the Kool-Aid a little bit, and make it easier for them? Or are we looking to attract and outreach and attract user groups that aren't currently participating so much? Or is it both?
Certainly both, but generally that interested but concerned group, the people who are maybe choosing to drive a 2-mile trip instead of bike because of a barrier that exists for them, or some education they might be missing. That's typically the largest portion of the population. And the recommendations of this plan are seeking to encourage mode shift.
Okay, thank you. Related to prioritization, that was said as one of the metrics or the objectives is determining criteria and metrics for prioritization and routes. Is that a later phase, or I'm not seeing information on that at this point?
Yes, it is coming right after this, essentially, the network corridor criteria. And some of the input we're seeking as part of the next round of community engagement will be around priorities.
Great, thank you. It's helpful to know that the interactive map timeline was extended. It's helpful to know that now, but I'm not sure I knew that it was extended. And it could be helpful to have some follow-up communication when something like this happens. You can email the commission with updates or pass things on to staff. But that's just an example of how we can.
That's noted, Commissioner. We did do our best to announce it on the project website as well as channels that the city has, but that's noted to do a circle back with the commission.
Yep, thank you. Just trying to improve things. Then some specific examples. I guess I appreciated both of the public, some aspects of at least of both the public comments today. The first, I already made a comment regarding education. Top priority if we're looking to increase safety and really focus energy is to create more class 4 separated bike paths. I mean, that's the holy grail of transportation. We have very few purple lines on our map right now, and I would really like to see a lot of emphasis going to figure out how to increase those throughout the city. It's challenging, I understand, I appreciate. But I know there's a very limited separated path on Arrestadero right now. I don't know if that corridor plan is complete, right, or if there's an opportunity to add more protected bike lanes on Arrestadero. That seems like there is no opportunity for that. It's unfortunate the initiatives from staff to try and move forward with the transportation improvements on East Meadow didn't go anywhere based on community feedback, and we lost opportunity for grant. But that don't quit. There's still opportunity there. Would love to see some sort of official bike lane on Cal Avenue on the area that's been closed off to traffic. I think it's kind of silly that people are asked not to ride their bike through there. I get it, but compliance is low. And it seems like there should be an opportunity to figure out how to permit bikes in that place. That would be very popular with many community members, I believe. The specific issue, the entrance to the Class 4 bike path on Arastadero, turning right from Coloom Drive, is a really awkward angle. It's a narrow path that you have to turn into, and I know you want people to slow down, but you've got to really slow down. And I would encourage. I don't know if that can be improved or not, but that's an area I would highlight. Or I'm trying to highlight. I know regarding the interactive map, I know of a specific request that was entered on that someone else entered on the map, and I didn't see it on the diagram, so I'll just point that out now. The Ramona Street entrance to the access path leading to Alma Plaza, the shopping center. It's a narrow walking path there, which connects the neighborhoods on the Middlesfield side of the area to the bike path to get into the shopping center. It'd be great if there were a way, if possible, to put red no parking across the bike path to make it possible to enter on your bike path. It's a very narrow strip between a couple of house driveways, and barely can get one car there, but it's very, very difficult to get a bike through there often. And just in closing, I think safety concerns were the highest priority of respondents, and I think that's appropriate. That should be our top priority. I'm an avid bicyclist for transportation purposes throughout the city. I slid out on my bike right at the entrance at the Coloom Arastadero intersection close to 2 years ago. In a sling because of that now. Finally, I'm no biking for 6 months. So I share the emphasis, and I'm supportive of the effort, and hope we can continue to work together. Thank you.
Appreciate those comments, Commissioner. Just want to touch on one point of education and highlighting that the Office of Transportation, in addition to their work in safe routes, are working with Silicon Valley Bicycle Coalition to bring adult bicycle riding classes to Palo Alto. We're hoping that they're free and paid for by Measure B money. So hopefully more information on that when it's a bit more established, but that's in the works. And then Chair Brown, I'd be remiss if I don't bring up the idea about landscape again. And I think we're fortunate in terms of sequencing and timing that we are doing this effort, following the city's effort on their housing element and recent adoption on that. So we can overlay kind of the proposed future sites for development as a part of this, and kind of overlay that and discuss about opportunities for new investments in areas that are going to have future population centers. So I think that's an advantage for this effort. Thanks.
Commissioner O'Kane.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mark, for your comment and for coming out today and making reference to the AB 1909. Also, thank you, Ozzy, for a very informative presentation. And also what you do in the community. I'm happy about the pop-ups. I'm interested in the Avenidas walk tour. Not too sure where the start point is and where the finish point is, but if you could share more details, that would be nice. I also like how you shared the bicycle level of traffic distress map, and you matched it with pictorial examples in the city. Some of us like to see pictures. That's really helpful. Also, I like your draft objectives, but just curious about how we would measure success. That's a big deal in terms of, we plan. Do we see that as goals? And if there are goals, how do we measure? How do we track? How do we monitor our progress? I'll pause and let you answer. I have many more questions as usual.
Okay, great. Thank you, Commissioner. In terms of measuring success, the objectives and the performance measures are our initial attempt at answering those questions. And we have laid out a few quantitative measures to help evaluate how well this plan and implementation of the projects in this plan achieves those objectives. So it's attachment Q that you can look at and reflect on, provide your input in terms of goal, like targets for those performance measures or how we're approaching the analysis there. The community walking tour will start at 450 Bryant Street on Wednesday, April 17th at 1:30 p.m.
And we can certainly follow up with more information on that week. It's the middle of April, but we can follow up with specific times and locations with the commission.
Awesome. Also, I wanted to ask, how do residents readily access all the data you shared today? Would that be on your website or?
Yes, the website has a number of documents on it. The website and this staff report, I suppose, would be the ways to access the information.
Okay. I remember the last time you were here, I asked about the role of most of our stakeholders, especially bicycle owners. I'm not too sure if you incorporated that. Maybe I missed that, but I didn't see it. And I also wanted to ask you to speak a little bit more about the STAR analysis on page 14. I didn't see that on your slides.
Great. Yes, bike shop owners, right. We reached out to a number of community businesses and are hoping to involve them either in promoting the events and participating in the events. So we did take your feedback and we have a list of contacts and we have conducted some outreach there. And the STAR analysis is an exercise, a hands-on exercise with a map where people will identify destinations that they walk or bike to. And as people populate this map, we'll start to see where there might be more demand on a given route, regardless of the type of infrastructure that's existing on it. So the model data from Replica, the counts that we get are bicyclists or people walking would choose the most comfortable route, and it may not be the most direct route. So through the STAR analysis, we're trying to understand what the most direct route or what the optimal route would be to, again, help inform like the priorities for the investments.
Awesome. Thank you. I also want to appreciate the fact that there will be adult bike classes. I'll keep my ears to the ground for that. I'll be glad if you can share that. I also want to ask about if this plan has any positive impact on our bike or our walk score as a city. And if not, why not?
I would guess you're talking about bike or walk score that's reported by like walkscore.com. Yeah, I don't believe that it would impact that calculation at all. We've looked into what that is based on, and it has nothing to do with the facilities on the street. It has everything to do with the land uses around. So the walk score is based on the concentration of shops and services in an area, and it doesn't reflect how connected the network or how safe or comfortable it is.
I see. Last but not the least, you mentioned in your slides that there's a decrease in collisions, right? Is there a reason for that? I know you had some data, which is very good, but just curious to know what could have prompted the decrease in collisions. And then if it's something good we're doing, how do we continue to do it? Thank you.
Yeah, a great question. And there would be a number of factors, and it is hard to understand which one might contribute more. It could be that fewer people are driving, or that fewer people are walking or biking, or that people are driving safer. We hope, but we don't really know.
And Commissioner, great question on the STAR analysis, where we realize through our planning efforts of this mid-April engagement activity week that the name STAR analysis might not be very direct. And so we might refer to it moving forward as the Bicycle Network Development Workshop, which is a mouthful, but we feel like it gets to the point of what we're trying to do. And that information will be a part of the information that I send over that we'll share more on the invite for this bike ride, the walking, and then again, this workshop, the STAR analysis, AKA Bicycle Network Development. Thanks.
Great. Any other comments?
Just
Commissioner Cripps?
one last very small question. What is the process to report hazards in the road or unsafe conditions that bicyclists or residents or walkers or anybody else sees when they're out there?
Definitely, we have the city's 311 for any repairs or issues that you see on the road. But if it's an emergency, obviously dial 911.
Great. Well, thank you very much. And thank you for the report. It was very well done. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you all.
Sorry. Commissioner Wade, did you have?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, thanks for very comprehensive presentation, and compared to last time, we've got a lot of more information. So come back to my earlier comment about public-private partnership. Do we have the possibility to gauge, say, Chamber of Commerce or all the companies over here, Tesla in the city, Mitsubishi, Wells Fargo, Chase Bank, to bring them into our capital campaign? And a lot of corporations themselves have budget for corporate social responsibility for community projects like this. And also, I know VMware have their own bike every year, their own, employees biking campaign as well. So I thought that might be something can look into if you have a resources contact or even directly contact Chamber of Commerce, which can bring you both impact for the city as well as capital gain. Second is, I mentioned last time about the multilingual education for bike safety, both to parents and children. I wonder if that's also in progress, because I didn't see the update on that for today's. And as you roll out your education, maybe that's something to take into consideration. And thirdly, as communication professional, I do feel the draft statement can be shortened, but also try to think what you try to put to the message out. What is your key messaging? Isn't this to have a low carbon lifestyle? You're changing the lifestyle, because if people, global travelers, especially new immigrants to this country, just feel, oh, this is a country or city built for cars, not for walk. And whether you move from Europe, whether you move from Asia, where the pedestrians really wide and the pedestrians really little here. So maybe you want to look into climate change impact by walking more, biking more. That's the vision, that's the message. The wellness, biking, walking more is better for wellness than driving more. And so mental health even, which is a relevant topic in this city, maybe pinpoint what this city needs and what the resident concerned about, bring to the bigger vision into your vision draft, look into, upgrade your lifestyle to a low carbon lifestyle and bike more. And we're providing safety, we're providing, connectivity, etc. So look into that level. That's 2 cents. Thank you.
Thank you. Also, Councilmember Vinker has her hand raised.
I do. Thank you. Yes, I will. It's exciting, honestly, to hear this and to hear all of your deep and thoughtful questions and comments. I will hold mine until it's my turn at council. I did just want to, I don't think I heard you say this, Ozzy, after Commissioner Greenfield asked or mentioned the interest in bike lanes along Cal Ave. And I just wanted to point out that I believe, if memory serves, that when council made its recent decision and resolution about Cal Ave, that bike lanes were part of the resolution that we adopted. And I can't remember the exact wording and the structure of them down the avenue, but I believe that's part of things. But it does point out something that you did refer to a few minutes ago, which is, it's a little bit of a moving, not so much target, but backdrop against which you're doing this with the housing element plans, the Quarry Road connection we just discussed, El Camino bike lanes. There's a lot of stuff. It's a San Antonio corridor. It's going to be a lot of stuff. So it'll be interesting to watch this and as it comes to council. But I did just want to make that one point of information. So thank you for recognizing me.
Appreciate those comments, council member.
Any other comments from the commission yet? Commissioner Greenfield?
Just one last quick question about how ADA considerations and handicap access are being considered within as a type of pedestrian, I suppose, pedestrian. And with respect to the walking tour coming up, I'm wondering if that would be an opportunity to try to get a few wheelchairs out there for some people to sit in a wheelchair and experience it, and for other people to push a wheelchair and experience it, and get some experiential learning. Thank you.
Add the baby stroller to that.
Okay, well, thank you so much for the presentation. We appreciate it, and we'll see you again in a few months.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Right, moving on to field use policy review.
Thank you. Adam Howard, our Senior Community Services Manager, will be providing that report.
Good evening. Give me just a moment to pull up the presentation for you. Okay, perfect. So good evening. Adam Howard, Senior Community Services Manager with the City of Palo Alto. Thank you for having me this afternoon or this evening. Appreciate everyone's time. My presentation is relatively short and sweet, but we'll have plenty of time for conversation. So I'm here today to discuss the Fields and Racquet Court Policy review that was done at a staff level with the Playing Fields Policy and Projects Ad Hoc, which is Commissioner Greenfield, Cribbs, and Vice Chair Freeman. So just some brief background, as I'm sure you all are very much aware, Palo Alto has a large collection of playing fields and courts, including things like artificial turf, grass fields, skin fields, which are dirt fields for activities such as baseball and softball, tennis courts, pickleball courts, and mixed use courts. The policy that we're referring here today really governs these spaces, tells staff how to broker them out to individuals, when, how much, all of those things. The racket court portion of this policy has been updated more frequently with our more recent additions of pickleball courts and dual use courts and pickleball rules. That policy has been reviewed more recently, but the fields portion of the policy really hasn't been reviewed since 2013. So given that it's been 10 years plus, we just thought it was an opportunity to look into it and see how things are going with that policy. Again, this was done at the staff level, but some strengths of the policy that we have found is just it does do a good job of providing allocations in a fair and balanced way, looking at residents and sizes of community groups. And it also does a good job of allocating fields based on field space. So we kind of ensure that fields are being used by the appropriate age and requirements of that nature. Some areas that may need additional review. We currently have a 51% resident requirement for youth groups to be what are considered priority groups. So the youth groups that kind of get first shot at brokering fields. That 51% number has been around for as long as I know. I actually don't know when that number was used. When it was reviewed 10 years ago, that number was already in place. So, it's just something that I'm thinking could potentially have a deeper review. Again, if it's 51% residents, that's great. It's predominantly Palo Alto residents, but that does mean 49% are non-residents. So that's bringing people onto the fields that aren't residents. That number is working currently, but again, it may be something we can look into deeper. The other thing that we do is we broker on priority seasons. So in the fall, the priority goes to soccer and football organizations. We currently don't have any football organizations that fall in that category. In the spring, it's lacrosse and baseball and softball. And then in summer, everyone's kind of on an equal playing field, and staff divvy out the space as fairly and as equally as we can. So the question is, does that still work? Sports aren't necessarily by season anymore. They're all kind of year round. And so how do we deal with that? It seems as though soccer's fall season is still the biggest, but it is definitely year round. And we have heard from lacrosse that spring is not necessarily their biggest season. So, trying to deal with how the priority impacts those different sports users. The other thing is the policy broker space based on a team getting to practice twice a week. The reality is, as the kids get older and things get more competitive, they practice more than twice a week. So what's that lead to? That leads to multiple teams being on one field. Is that a problem? I'm not here to say that it is, but it's just something that we consider as could be an issue, something we want to look at further. And then the last is just residency verification. We've talked about residency being a key to how someone becomes a priority user, and how do we verify that? So right now it's done through utility numbers. Staff can check utility number, make sure it's accurate and that it's confirmed. But there's different last names to family members. You could be renting, so making sure that the utility number matches can be a little difficult. So it's just a question of whether there are other methods out there or better methods. Again, the policy is working well. So these are just kind of questions that came up through our review process. Some other things that came up that aren't necessarily policy driven, but are things that we think we could do a little bit differently or better. The first one is just a general policy cleanup. If you see in the attachment, these are just clarifications, formatting, wordsmithing, things that aren't actually changing the policy, but just made them operate and read a little bit better. These are things that don't require additional levels of approval because they're really not changing the policy. They're just making them a little bit make more sense, which we thought was important. The other thing that we see out on the field is kind of goal storage issues or equipment storage issues, things getting left out on the fields after organizational uses. This is something that staff think can be handled on a communication level, really creating a detailed plan for all the equipment that's left out on the fields, where it goes, how to safely store it, whether that's lock combinations or where the boxes are stored, and include detailed maps. We understand as staff that these organizations have a lot of coaches. The coaches change, they're at different fields. So us upping our level of communication, we feel is the right first step to see if we can help resolve some of these issues. If it doesn't, there are other steps that can be taken. People can lose space, there could be fines. That's not what we want to do. That's certainly not how we want to accomplish any of these issues being resolved. So our thing is we'll start with this communication plan, really get out to the organizations, make sure they understand and can put the information to the coaches and hope that resolves those issues. The other issue that we saw is just kind of additional garbage around tournaments. As you may imagine, tournaments bring larger crowds. With that can come an influx of garbage. So again, as staff, we want to take our steps necessary to help this, which we're seeing is, additional garbage bags available, looking at the sites where there may be need additional garbage cans or receptacles, and providing those. And then again, providing that detailed communication about what the organization's expectations are in terms of cleaning up after themselves, as well as where they should be putting, either whether there's dumpsters on site or whether they should be housing the garbage. Because ultimately, it doesn't become a problem until there's overflow, right? I think everybody's pretty good in Palo Alto about bringing the garbage to the cans. If those are full, problems start to exist. So if we can kind of get to that little problem area and help resolve that, I think we can improve those issues. So kind of what we're suggesting as next steps is really starting to take the review to the user's perspective, check in with field users, see how the policy is working for them. Again, it has been 10 years. From the staff's perspective, it's working really well. But we would want to make sure that the policy is working. We brought up some items that may need review. There could be things that we don't necessarily know about that are causing issues within our policy. So really wanting to check with that. I think our first step would be some form of survey that gets sent out to the organizations, and then the staff and the ad hoc could review that and see, are there certain things that keep coming up? Are there certain parts of the policy that are creating issues for our users? And then kind of investigate next steps, whether that's policy change or tweaks or deeper communications with the community to see what we need to really work. And of course, that would include looking at our neighboring cities. What are they doing? What's working? What's not? So that we can create a policy that's most effective for us here in Palo Alto. So that is short and sweet. I can open it up for questions and comments.
Thank you, Adam. All right, let's begin with clarifying questions for Adam.
Can we come back to slides 1? No, I mean, the one that you said you need to review. Yeah, all this, yeah.
This one or the one that we talked about possible review areas?
Okay. I got a request, maybe I'll bring later in the event I went with Encrypts. Seniors want to use tennis courts practicing for racquetball. Oh, no, practicing for pickleball. How do we incorporate that? That's a later discussion, or you want to make comment here?
Sorry, what's the question?
So there's a few seniors, especially people who are leading the pickleball, I don't know, call movement, and they would like to see the policy to allow them play or practice pickleball during the day on the tennis courts, when tennis courts are not used. In Mitchell Park specifically, I think, yeah.
So this part of the policy, we really did focus in on the fields portion of it. We do understand there's a courts part of the policy as well that we're not necessarily addressing here, but I think that's something that we've noted, the kind of joint use between pickleball and tennis. Yeah. We didn't focus on it for this presentation, but it is something that is coming as well.
Okay. Thank you.
I'd like just to add, as a member of the ad hoc, not only was the presentation not focused on it, but the initial work of the ad hoc group was focused on field policy and not on racket court policy, beyond the extent of cleaning up the existing policy, the aesthetic non-functional changes.
Okay.
Yeah, and probably should mention that this policy hasn't been updated since, it's been a while.
Yeah, the section that speaks about fields was last really looked at in 2013.
Right.
All right, before we get into discussion, if there's no more clarifying questions, are there any public comment?
I have one
clarify what-
question.
right?
What are other cities doing about residency requirements for sport fields? Do you know?
So I only started to briefly look into what other cities are doing just because I felt like that was probably going to be the next steps. So one that I do know is the Mountain Views policy. They don't have a requirement of a specific residency percentage, but they only broker based on your residency numbers. So if you only had 10, and a whole bunch of non-residents, you were only going to get space for 10 participants. So that's how they kind of make the importance of residency for them, is that they only give the field space based on your residents, whereas we need a certain percentage to even consider you a priority group.
Okay, do we have any public comment on this item?
No hands raised online or in person.
All right, thank you. All right, bringing it back to the commission, just opening it back to the ad hoc for any other comments specifically on the process or background. Commissioner Green?
I would just make a comment about the fields in general. I think we're really fortunate to have a lot of fields in Palo Alto, and they're pretty good shape. We have a lot of both boys and girls playing year-round sports now, and that is creating a bigger impact, I think, on the fields. And so as we look for other opportunities, we have to continue to look for other places to have fields in Palo Alto, because if we had them, we would certainly be able to use them, I think, Adam, right?
I would agree with that, yes.
Yeah, so I think this was a really good exercise, I think, for us, at least for me on the ad hoc committee, and also to look at the policies from 10 years ago. I especially like the work with the user groups to help clean up the fields after tournaments and after practices. I think it's important practice to get into, and trying to make it easy, but also to communicate. And then the importance of just both the garbage and putting the goals back away so that other people can use the field. So like all in all, it was a good exercise, and we'll look forward to part 2 and the pickleball tennis situation next time.
Yes. Yeah, I just wanted to first of all say this just was a great being a member of this ad hoc and working with you and your team to really try and stay on top of things and being proactive versus reactive, which is always helpful. And you and your team have done a really good job of that. It's obvious from the number of meetings that we've had with you and your staff on reviewing this, and then the next steps and going forward. I think also you guys have done a really good job of knowing who your stakeholders are, reaching out, trying to keep them in the loop and getting feedback from them before things become a big issue. And I think this is a good exercise in just sort of pointing out some of the things that maybe needs to kind of be out there in front when we're talking about soccer events and things like this that sort of push the fields to a limit. Trying to stay ahead of things like the trash cans overflowing and the lack of restrooms and so forth. So this is a good first part, and I think reaching out further, having something already in place, reaching out to some of the other local cities, just find out what they are doing, what things might be working for them. And it sounds like in meeting with you that sometimes they're reaching out to us. We become kind of the benchmark for other cities to use, and that's probably a good thing. So just appreciate you and your staff staying on top of it and looking forward to the next phase. So keep up the good work on that.
I want to thank Adam and Chase for their support in working with the ad hoc. I think it was I think you did a great job in working to help us synthesize into ideas into some concrete steps and ideas that we can look to pursue for the benefit of the community. Appreciate that staff was careful to outreach and notify field stakeholders about this meeting tonight. The fact that no one chose to speak this evening either says something about the hour of the meeting or says that we're on the right track and then nothing too controversial is coming up. I did receive one comment from a field stakeholder recommending a annual meeting of stakeholders that wasn't associated with brokering and was just focused on general status update. It'd be an opportunity for sharing information in both directions. I know this is something that used to happen on a periodic basis. I was involved with it prior to my time in the commission, while as part of one of the stakeholder organizations. I recognize it places a burden on staff to have a meeting, and maybe it doesn't need to be annual. Certainly, it hasn't happened in a good amount of time, so it's something we got to try once and see how it goes.
Yeah, and I'll just say we do have that back on our radar as something that's separate from the brokering, because we found that it was useful just to get input that wasn't necessarily about a grab for space, right? Because at our brokering meetings, although we try to bring up those subjects, they do get very specific, right? Because it's very important to each organization about how much space they're going to get. So it really turns into the focus. And I think that to get what we want out of those meetings, they do need to be separate. So we are bringing those back.
That's great to hear. Thank you. For the commission in general, I think we're interested in comments on the ideas we've raised for potential additional review. I think these ideas are a good starting point to get feedback from the field stakeholders. If there's something we're missing or something you don't agree with, we'd like to know that. I think the ideas that are not specifically related to policy, like the tournament plan to improve garbage pickups, is great. I think a big key to that is just communicating where the receptacles are to throw the trash bags, providing extra trash bags. I think you articulated very well. The breakdown is when the bins are full. And so this is some good ideas on how to address that, and maybe potentially looking into providing easier resources for increasing toileting facilities for large events when capacity is pushing the current infrastructure. But overall, I appreciate the presentation and the work with us. Thank you.
Well, I have familiarity with this policy on the other side of it. So it's actually nice to sort of look at this proactively without sort of having to do the change. It also speaks to the success of the policy and the administration of the policy, that it hasn't been updated in 10 years because there hasn't been a growing demand for change. So I personally think that the areas of review make sense. And I think they're good areas to look at and see what our neighboring jurisdictions are doing. But I also appreciate that we're not coming at it a solution looking for a problem, that maybe these things are working and we haven't heard anything because they are a good fit for our community. So I agree with the approach. I think the things about the trash and the extra communication are really more in the administration of the policy. And I think those are good best practices to address communication. And I appreciate all the outreach and the work that the ad hoc and that staff has done on this. So thank you. Any other comments for Adam?
I have some questions or comments. I'm not sure, just because I'm not as familiar. Are you looking at the Parks Master Plan to see if there's any directions related to this that can be helpful?
I haven't looked at that in terms of the way the policy is shaped. My kind of vague understanding of the Parks Master Plan is that's more about how the different spaces are shaped. And so this is really just about the playing fields. So it doesn't really touch on passive playing space or parks, playgrounds, things of that nature. It's really just about the spaces that are designated for sports activity.
Okay. So I don't know if there's anything I don't remember, but you might want to look at the master plan. In terms of residency requirements, I've witnessed different cities having very different approaches. Some really look, say, oh, you know, we should welcome everybody, and other ones are like, oh, residents only. And so I don't know how you go about this. How do you decide whether this is good enough or not? And there's a risk going there that you'll end up on an extreme one way or the other. And then a lot of people will be unhappy. So I'm just commenting on this, not necessarily waiting for an answer, just saying sometimes you step into something and you sink in mud. So I don't know how you're going to do it, but it could be something to think about. The other thing is many other cities use school grounds. They have their various types of agreements with them. And this doesn't apply to school playing fields.
So it does for all of the playing spaces that the city has access to, which is really all the elementary school fields and the middle school fields, which the city brokers after 4 p.m. 4 p.m. to light, and then on weekends. So the policy does govern those fields during our use of them.
Okay. That's good. Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Any other comments, Commissioner Oche?
Thank you very much for sharing the update with us. I don't have any comment. I was just going to ask about conflict resolution, but I guess, you know, if we have regular meetings, that might come to the agenda and then it can be trashed. So looking forward to see how that would work. I'm curious to know how you've done it in the past, but
I'm just trying to understand conflict management between like organizations.
yes, by users, like field users.
So it's something we do, and it's really about, you know, breaking down what each organization needs. I'm a big fan of getting people in the same space and just communicating, because ultimately what they're typically they're both looking for the same thing, right? Which is the adequate space for their participants. So normally 9 times out of 10, we can get in a room, discuss who needs what and when, and come to an agreement on who gets what space. What I like about our policy a lot is if that communication doesn't work, the policy works to drive who gets what. So our first stance is always, let's communicate, let's talk it out. If it doesn't work, we fall back to the policy and it dictates who gets what based on the number of residencies they have and the number of teams they have. So ultimately, to be honest, the policy is a little bit more stringent. You know, it's not as, it provides a very clear line. They prefer the flexibility. So their objective is really to talk out any issues, because if it goes to the policy, it's very forward. Here's what you're going to get. Here's what you're not going to get. And that's the final answer. So they prefer to talk it out, which is what I really like about our policy, because it works, but they prefer to communicate with each other.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Adam. I appreciate it. All right, moving on to ad hoc committees and liaison updates. Are there any ad hoc updates?
I have a lot, but can we start with the good news?
Okay.
Okay. So I know everybody got an email from Javed today about the release between the city and the school district reaching a tentative agreement about space at Coverly. And so if you haven't seen your email, you should look at it. And if not, I have it right here and I would love to read it to you, because I think this is really, really, really good news for the community. The city of Palo Alto and the Palo Alto Unified School District have made significant strides toward finalizing an agreement to enable the city to permanently permanently secure a portion of Cubberley for the development of a community center. The city and PAUSD have met 7 times since December 2023 and are now in the late stages of negotiation. We have agreed to engage a mediator to bridge the remaining gap on the property terms and price and work toward an agreement expeditiously. This collaboration underscores our collective commitment to the community's welfare and the future of Cubberley as a key community asset. And I think that this is really important for all the citizens, for the school district, and for the city. And I think a lot of credit is due to the people on the ad hoc committee from the council and also the school district. And I, for one, appreciate it, but I'm sure there are a lot of residents out there who are very, very pleased about this announcement. So thank you for letting me go first. I appreciate it.
Of course. And Councilmember Vinker, did you have comments?
I do. 2 things. One, yes, I'm delighted that we could issue that release today. This is why last month, when there was concern about keeping Cubberley as an option on the site list for the Wellness Center, I was encouraging patience. But I do need to caution, there is not a tentative agreement, so we cannot characterize it that way. There is only an agreement to mediate. We're optimistic, we're committed, we're excited, we're going forward with all efforts to make something happen, but there is not a tentative agreement. I just need to be super clear on that. But that said, cross your fingers, maybe next month we'll be talking about one.
Thank you for the clarification. It's always nice to have the attorneys in the room. Thank you.
Great. Other ad hoc or liaison updates? Keep going. Okay, your microphone on. There we go.
This is part of the, oh, I'm sorry. Is there somebody who wants to speak? Oh, okay. This is part of the partnership between the Friends of the Palo Alto Park. So Roger Smith sent me a bunch of pictures today and a description of the work that Juanita Salisbury is doing along Embarcadero Road. And I think that if you can just scroll through that, this is from the beginning to the end. There's a lot of commentary too, which we probably don't need to read, but I think it's going to look really terrific. And it's a real wonderful example of the pollinator gardens that are showing up in collaboration with funding from the Friends of the Parks and good leadership. And I thought that was another piece of good news. And I think thanks definitely to the Friends of the Parks for the funding and for Juanita for her leadership.
Great. I love a visual update. That's excellent. We do have an update on the park dedication, and feel free to jump in if I miss anything. So it did go to council, the Tower Well Park dedication that was approved. There was some follow-up on the name. And so we're working to do a little bit more research with the Historical Association on the other names that were brought forth at the council meeting. But the actual dedication itself has been done. So that was the big win. And then there's also some historical designation that we'll be working with HRB related to the site. Anything else you want to add?
Yes, I have a few updates. The Baylands Tidegate project, Valley Waters project to refurbish the Tidegate has undergone some revisions, and there's a meeting organized now with environmental stakeholders. It's going to be this Tuesday from 12:30 to 2 o'clock with the invited stakeholders. Commissioner Kleinhaus and I will be joining the meeting, and I've been working with staff to coordinate outreach to the stakeholders. There is There is room for one more Parks and Rec commissioner to attend if anyone is interested. Let me know if you are interested. And so Valley Water is moving forward with this project. Again, it's been kind of on and off again. And so I think it would be appropriate to reappoint a Parks and Rec Commission liaison to the Baylands Tidegate project. The Hawthorne's public access working group, which I'm a part of and our liaison to, that's a mid-pen project. We had an on-site meeting, was the sixth time the group has met. That was this Sunday, and it's probably our second to last meeting, and focusing on public access considerations, including parking, trail access, and types of uses, pedestrians, bicycles, horses, and dogs. And Commissioner Kleinhaus attended that meeting as well. And the field stakeholders or field liaisons have been in communication with stakeholders and with staff, learning more about plans for the Hoover School redevelopment project, which will impact the playing fields at JLS and cut into the playing fields by 30 to 35 feet or so. And so that's new communication which is going on, which is important for us to understand. And that's all I've got.
As a follow that, Kristen, do we need to have a separate action to appoint a liaison for the Tide Gates, like at a meeting?
That's a good question, but I don't think that's necessary. Have we done that in the past? Commissioner Greenfield?
My understanding is that if we're going to create an ad hoc, that would require an action, but it's at the discretion of the chair to appoint a liaison. The chair is always welcome to take input from the body as a whole. But ultimately, the chair appoints commission or ad hoc members and liaisons.
And we do have our retreat coming up, so that might be the opportunity to do it since we'll be assigning other liaisons.
Yep, perfect. Okay. Other updates?
Yes, so I have a couple things that are sort of important to a couple of people here. One is the wetlands. As we mentioned in a previous update, the city brought in a new consultant who has been working the past few months on what the city is permitted for and our communications with the water board. So they're working on that. They've conducted 2 on-site field visits to look at soil salinity and the plants in the wetlands. And they will likely be back another time once the rain has passed, and I want to see what growth is under the water. They are, as I understand it, in the midst of preparing an assessment report and working with staff to present. The staff will be presenting to the water board at some point, outlining what's recommended and what we should be doing. The city feels that we're on the right track, and that the initial plan is to have it next week to send out. Well, the current assessment would be sometime in May, and have the opportunity to look at the spring growth. So if I misspoke on that, you can, okay, all right. The other item is First Tee. First Tee received the interim agreement from the city yesterday, and is in the process of reviewing and providing additional content with the plan to send the draft back to the city before the end of the week. I think tomorrow, or the next day. So
Very good news.
So that's good news. George is on board with that.
Thank
So
you.
that's the golf course continues to operate and has been, as we know, at the mercy of rain, just like tennis and pickleball. So recent rains have caused a dip in revenue, but Lon doesn't have the numbers for this month yet. Just saying this is a slow time, with the rainy season, late spring, early fall. So we'll keep working on that. But the top of the list is to continue to get more information about the wetlands and what's happening with that, as well as the first tee work that needs to be done.
Great, excellent updates. Commissioner Garcia.
I think this might be the last one. So the inaugural Senior Games Week, which I talked about last month, was just finished. And it was quite a success because a lot of people still didn't know about the Senior Games, but our activities included a proclamation from Mayor Stone. Thank you very much, Kristen, for helping with that. And then a recognition certificate from the governor, from the governor's office. So he was very pleased about that and pleased to present it. We had a joint partnership with Avenidas and showed a really super film that I encourage everybody to watch called The Team Dream, about two swimmers who decided that they wanted to compete, hired a coach, and it's a wonderful story. So we did that at Avenidas, and then we ended up here in Palo Alto with the Bay Area Senior Games swim meet at Rinconada, and congratulations to the Rinconada staff and the managers and the lifeguards and the 72 swimmers who swam rain or shine, and it was a little bit of both. But everybody had a great job, so a great time. So thank you very much for listening to that.
Great. Okay. Thanks for excellent update. So moving on to questions, comments, announcements, or future meeting agendas. I believe we have a couple items set. We do have a retreat on April 19th in the afternoon. And then for the April meeting, I think e-bike shifted to April.
It did. We need to have a meeting with the ad hoc. There's some additional work I think that needs to happen. So we'll try and get a meeting scheduled with the ad hoc to decide.
Okay. And then park dedication may have sort of a determined item. And then just for the group, May will largely be the work plan. The meeting will be dedicated to the work plan and just finalizing whatever we decide at the retreat. So for other items that you're working on, just keep that in mind. And then there was a request about information on the creek ordinance update coming to the commission, maybe just as a informational. I don't know if that's possible for the April meeting.
Sure, I'll talk to my colleagues in planning and their consultant on a good time for that.
Could you elaborate just a little bit about what that's about?
I believe it's an initiative that's being undertaken to look at the creek setbacks and plan. It's going to go to planning and transportation and eventually city council. It doesn't have a formal stop here, but it's of interest to the commission. And so just thought we'd inquire to what presentation or information could be made available to us either via email or a presentation if they can take us on.
That sounds like a good opportunity for public outreach as well.
There was one community meeting and I believe we shared that with the commission. It was a Zoom meeting earlier this month, I think. Yeah. So I'll continue to share those opportunities for outreach and public comment as they come up.
Great. Any other comments?
If we're ever looking for a short presentation, I saw one yesterday that the Palo Alto Pickleball Club put together and presented for the Rotary of Palo Alto in terms of pickleball, the history, the sport, the reason, and what Palo Alto has done for its community, but also for our community. And in terms of a partnership with a group, it's a really great model and example. So it's probably 10 minutes, and it could be something that you might like to fill in an agenda.
Sure.
Just a thought.
Yeah, keep that in mind for potentially the April meeting, depending on other items. Anything, Councilmember Banker?
No, thank you. Just always a pleasure to hear all of the great stuff going on with our parks. I mean, we're just so proud of it as a city, and you all are amazingly well-informed and earnest and thorough in your work. It's just a delight to observe. So thanks for having me.
Great. Well, thank you. All right. If there's nothing else, we will adjourn this meeting.
I have one more
Oh, yeah.
question.
Sorry. go
I'm
ahead.
so sorry.
No, I'm sorry.
When we get letters and emails from residents, how do they get answered? And who is responsible to answer those?
I believe a lot of them are fielded by staff, especially, and I know some of them are good about passing on the response from staff to Parks and Recreation Commission. And then if there are other items that are specific to an ad hoc or liaison, sometimes they will do the follow-up. I know, especially like the dog park ones, I will work with staff to make sure that a response comes in. Kristen, do you want to add to anything?
Not too much. A lot of times when the Parks and Rec Commission gets an email, the city council also gets it. And so we respond to the resident. And then we send that in to the city manager, and then they batch them together and send those all to city council so they can see what has been responded to. So we might, I'll talk to Sarah and staff about maybe doing something similar for the commission. So you could get like a email once a week or once a month that just includes all of the responses that we've had, and you can see them that way. So we'll come up with a better procedure just so it's very clear who's responding and what those responses are.
That would be really helpful. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Good question. All right. And we will adjourn this meeting. Thanks, everyone.